While the people are meditating, there is one who alone fights the wicked Cheon, a young fairy from En Oing Sophie. The little girl claps her hands and says in surprise that it's amazing because she sees the celestial being. The main character smiles and asks the little girl if she looks like a celestial goddess. The girl suggests to the child that from now on, he should simply call her little sister Cheon. Cheon. Ah. Young's mentor Dongmyeon asks the girl why she doesn't train but does something else. And then he says that if she had trained just as hard, she would have already ascended and become a celestial. The lady replies that she has enough fun with the master and fighting the wicked. And then she claims that she does not want to become a celestial being and only cares about the master. The mentor says that she is the only one who thinks so. And at this time, the main character thought that it was better for her to remain human and live 100 years with the master than to live an eternal life alone by becoming a god. And therefore, he understands that it would be great if he adhered to the same opinion. The main character does not understand how in a dream she married him, and her teacher is her dearest husband, and her dream came true. The girl was so happy, and because of this, she thought that she would devote her whole life to him. The lady thought that after the wedding, they would live happily ever after. A girl with black hair turns to a man and calls him darling, then asks him to wait as she thought they would be together forever. At this time, the man mercilessly extends the sword towards the lady, and then he says that if she is not going to become a celestial being, he invites her to give her his accumulated elixir of immortality. Elixir of immortality is a crystal formed by the method of accumulating energy in the body through training and meditation. The elixir contains all the energy accumulated by a person. The main character heard this and was surprised, because all this happened only because of this. And at this time, she does not understand how he, the most beloved and trusted, can betray her. And she understands that he never loved her, and he only needed her to become a celestial. At this time, the main character became hurt. Her heart is broken, and tears of blood have flowed, and she is angry at herself for being blinded by love. After all, she understands that if she didn't love him, everything would be fine. Cheon, died at the hands of the man she loved. The girl understands that she was so naive that she died so stupidly. However, she does not regret this life, although she does not think that she will ever be able to love again. The life of the main character did not end there, and she was reborn as the 10th princess of the Aries Sai Empire. By order of His Majesty, the emperor from this day on, the princess will live in a cold palace. Hearing this, the main character opened her eyes and thought that she was alive. The emperor announces that the princess will be taken care of by a maid and a cold palace, and therefore she is forbidden to leave the palace without the permission of the emperors. At this time, the main character looked at her hands, and she did not understand why they were so small, and only sounds came from her, and therefore he feels awkward because he does not understand what is happening. Cheon, noticed that at this time a handsome man was looking at her. Suddenly, she heard a woman's voice asking, His Majesty to have mercy on the princess. The woman asks what the newborn child is to blame for, and then claims that in addition, she is the child of His Majesty, just like Prince Kalen. The servant addresses the woman and then tells her to shut up, and asks how the servants dared to say such a thing. After all, Saya, born as a cursed child, is doomed to remain in the cold palace until her death. At this time, the small child begins to cry, and the main character thought that there was a very heavy atmosphere in this room, and it made her scared. And then she cries and thinks that she wishes someone would explain to her what's going on. The prince informs his subordinates that they are already leaving. At this time, the main character thought that she had transformed into Saya, the 10th eldest princess of the Aries Empire. And she is a poor girl who was abandoned as soon as she was born. And her father is an emperor who seems to have no blood or tears. Lady wondered if she could survive in a world that was completely different from her previous life. The girl realizes that 3 months have passed since she came into this world, and at that time she had a fever, and her body was burning, and it made her too hot. The little child is crying, and at this time does not understand why she is so unlucky, and she still cannot forget this scene when her father left her and he turned away from his newborn daughter so coldly. The main character does not understand how a person can be so evil after throwing away his own blood. and she understands that this was originally the life of Princess Sai, and she reincarnated into it, and now this is her destiny. The girl reflects on the fact that, as soon as she was born, her father abandoned her, and the prospect of spending the rest of her life in a cold palace frightens her, because she reincarnated to suffer even more, because he understands that the princess in the cold palace is like a phoenix in a cage, which will now turn into a grilled chicken. Being in the body of a child, she understands that she cannot just die again. And then she wanted to use her magic, but she remembered that the magic disappeared because she was reincarnated as a child, and therefore she does not understand what to do. The lady remembers that in her previous life she was a good fighter. Although she didn't particularly want to become a celestial, she had enough skills and qualities, and she was also a beauty who was killed by her husband and most reliable mentor. The main character understands that, fortunately, or unfortunately, she is reincarnated as a princess, and that's why she can't even do magic and crawl normally with this tiny body. A small child lying in his crib screams and cries all the time. Riel comes into the room and screaming asks where the fire is coming from, and then he used magic to touch the child. At this time, she felt that the ice extinguished all the fire, and therefore understands that this is amazing ice magic. The main character reflects that at least in this world there is magic, and now that she sees it with her own eyes, it seems to her that it is much similar to the technique that she practiced. Suddenly, the child felt that he was flying, and she understands that this is magic, and in a few minutes, she found herself in the butler's arms. The butler says that he is glad because the princess was not harmed, and then hugs her. The maids ask Mr. Real for forgiveness, and then I explain that it was not on purpose. The butler says that the maids who are responsible for the princess left their workplace, leaving her alone in the room, and in addition left the princess near the fireplace so that the coals would flare up and light the fire. The young master claims that if he had not found her, she might have already gone to another world, and therefore he does not understand how they dare to ask for forgiveness. The maids explain that the weather has been cold for several days, and they were simply worried about the princess's health, and therefore placed her by the fireplace. And they hoped that everything would be all right anyway, because they know that the emperor does not like the princess, and they do not understand why the lackey still cares about her. Hearing this, the little girl wanted the maid to be confessed, since she also considered the maids to be worthless. The butler says that if they're cold here, they can start working in the boiler room tomorrow, and then reminds them to remember to watch for sparks on the blanket while they sleep. Hearing this, the maids screaming explain that it is impossible to live there, and then ask him to forgive them, and they explain that they were wrong, and this will not happen again. At this time, the little child thought that Riel had done a good job. The butler asks Her Majesty if she is hungry, and then offers her something to eat. The main character knows that Riel is the butler of the cold palace, and her late mother has always been merciful to him, and therefore she understands that he is sincerely devoted to her and her daughter, and considers him the only one who truly cares about her in this palace. However, the girl reflects that sometimes he scares her when he says that the princess is so cute and he wants to bite her. And that's why she wants him not to tell her this, because she's scared. The emperor abandoned the princess, and therefore Riel is the only one she can trust and rely on. The girl remembers that her previous life was shitty, but this time she plans to change everything. And therefore it does not matter what her fate was in her past life, since she almost became a celestial being, and therefore will easily overcome everything. The butler says that if she listens to him, she will grow up to be the biggest and most beautiful. But only later did the main character realize that dreaming of becoming an adult was already a luxury, because she understands that her father can finish her off at any moment for the sake of the empire and his nephew. Riel tells the princess that it's time to study, so she suggests watching. However, a small child does not understand what to look at because he sees nothing. The butler again tells her to watch carefully, and after his words, the girl saw magic swirling around the butler's hand. He says that this is the first princess. Seeing this, the main character understands that there is magic in this world, and therefore believes that it is very good. The butler shows other princesses, and at this time, the child understands that many of them are princesses like her. He explains that all these princesses are Her Highness's older sisters. And then he invites the child to try to say sisters. Hearing this, the main character thought that it was very simple. And then she said this word, but the sounds were completely different. Riel says that if Her Highness does not study well, she will receive maid milk for dinner. The girl hearing this thought it was too cruel since she was still a child. The young master tells the child that he is giving her another chance, and then she says that it doesn't matter whether she knows the word sister, because the main thing is that she remembers these two words. The princess saw the guy in the palace and said that it was His Majesty the King and Prince Kalin, and then she showed her brother. Seeing this, the girl thought that with her, his face was sour like a lemon, and with him, he was so cute. And she doesn't understand whether this is really just because he is his only heir. The Emperor Ares chose his youngest son, Prince Kalin, as his nephew. The youngest son is Kalin, his twin. The emperor has many children, but Prince Kalin is his only son heir to the throne. Everyone in the imperial family of the Horus Empire cared about Prince Kalina. Unfortunately, Prince Kalin was born with a curse in his soul, and they say that if he does not lift the curse before the age of 16, he will die. Thus, the wizards of the empire used various methods to dispel the prince's curse. Before the powerful curse, all methods have failed, and the curse has not yet been lifted. The main character did not think that she would become a princess, but she understands that, even if this is so, she was born to save another person. Because she understands that only she can save Kalen's soul, the girl understands that at best she has been reborn, but then she will be sacrificed. And she doesn't understand why he's doing this to her, because she's still a child, but she already feels dead and wonders if she should worry about it. The lady ponders that the reason she is still alive and not being sacrificed is because she is the evil child in the legend. The maid turns to the child and says that she is dirty, and then says that there are a lot of problems with her, and so she considers it unfortunate that she should be the one taking care of this sinister child. In the Ares Empire, there is one legend that a woman with red eyes has a dark soul and is doomed to misfortune. Saya looked at herself in the mirror and thought that, ever since she was born, her eyes were red, and people labeled her as an evil child. Because of this, there are pros and cons, and also divided on the issue of sacrificing her. The Maggies report that the girl was left alive and suggest that she not even think about interfering with them. Many said that if the soul of the sinister child was used, the prince would also be doomed to misfortune. Even in the imperial palace, the ministers' opinions were divided, and there was no unity, and so the victim was never identified. Father Emperor watched silently. And in the end, the main character reflected on the fact that it was for this reason that she was still alive, because she understood that her life was in the hands of this man. The great emperor of the Ares Empire is a cruel and great monarch who has shed a lot of blood on both hands to protect the empire. And the girl doesn't know what he's thinking about, but the main thing she thinks is that she should never touch his son. The lady understands that as soon as this man decides to make another attempt to save his only heir, the hour of her death will come. And at that time, she thought that she would never give up, and living in this life, she would not die again. A small child reflects on the fact that he has a new life, and it should be lived well. And then she remembers that in her previous life, she was not a cultivator and should not lose these skills in vain. The girl knows that she used to practice martial arts, and she wondered if it was possible to study martial arts in this world. After all, she understands that the day she fully studies martial arts again, she will not have to fear the emperor, since she will leave Theros. The butler turns to the child and claims that she has finally become, and therefore, he believes that this indicates good physical fitness. Hearing this, the main character thought that she would train from today and return to her previous martial arts in 10 years. The young master takes the girl in his arms and says that their princess is a good kid and also cool. Suddenly, the lady thought about what would happen if the emperor sacrificed her before she started practicing martial arts, and therefore she believes that she no longer has enough time. And then she begins to cry. The butler doesn't understand what's going on and asks what she's doing, and then say that maybe the princess is hungry again, and she really is like a greedy kitten. At this time, the little girl thought that she was not hungry, and somehow felt uncomfortable because no one understood her. And the next day, the servant turns to His Highness and says that since he came to the palace of Princess Sei and asked if it was possible, he finally decided to make a sacrifice to the princess. The emperor replies that the time has not yet come, and then says that this day will come anyway. Absorbing the energy between heaven and earth is the key of cultivation. The main character knows what it means. She must absorb qi through meditation. After all, she believes that by concentrating on cultivation, she will be able to break through 3 to 4 stages from her current strength. The girl thinks that she will then be able to escape, since she does not want to stay here to be sacrificed by the lamb. Suddenly, the little child fell asleep and realized that there was not a drop of spiritual energy in this world. But I believe that without spiritual energy, she will not be able to cultivate, and without cultivation, she will not be able to escape. At this time, the girl thought that she would not be able to escape and would remain here and therefore would be a victim. And then she starts crying and screaming in. The maid asks the princess if she is falling asleep again, and also wonders why she is crying, and then takes her in her arms. A little girl cries and thinks that there is no spiritual energy in this world. The maid asks if the lady is hungry, and then says that she will warm her milk. A little girl screams and thinks that she doesn't want milk, but wants spiritual energy. The maid brought milk to the child and invites her to drink it in order to grow up. The girl quickly drinks the milk because she believes that she should grow up faster, because then she will be able to control that evil demon. Time flew so quickly that 5 years flew by unnoticed, and all this time she continued to live in the cold palace, being forgotten. The main character believed that everyone had forgotten about her and wanted this to really be so. After all, she understands that, then she would not have to become a victim, and she also believes that this unfortunately is impossible. The little girl wishes only to be forgotten and to be able to live another day. The princess collected flowers, and when she smelled them, she thought that the plants of this world do not have spiritual energy. And then she remembers that in her past life, she often practiced making pills, and she wondered if she could make pills from these ordinary plants. The girl thinks that she should try, because suddenly she will succeed. And he reflects on the fact that she is tearing them down only to survive. And if they want revenge, they can do it to the imperial bastard. At this time, the maid, seeing that the girl is picking flowers, says that since the princess loves flowers, she offers to pick a few for the palace. Another maid says that 5 years have passed, but His Highness has not visited the princess even once. And to be honest, when she was sent to the cold palace, she was disgusted. But now the princess is becoming sweeter and sweeter, and therefore she feels sorry for her now. The maid believes that His Highness is the stubborn ruler and protector of the Empire Ares, and in order to suppress that rebellion, he killed his brother, who was the leader. And he did not even spare his relatives, and hundreds of people were executed, including his relatives from the royal family. And that's why probably children are like insignificant things to him. Heard the maids talking, the princess thought that she should avoid that demon at all costs, and it was better for her not to cross paths with him until she finished tracing. Suddenly, a little girl saw behind the fence a herb that collects spirits, and was very surprised. Since this herb is one of the main ingredients for alchemies, the main character thought that now she could use them to create pills, and so she believes that her majestic escape is just around the corner. When the girl stretched out her hand to pick a flower, she noticed that her hand was too small and she could not do it. Well, when she climbed through, she thought that a child has its advantages. At this time, the maid tells the other that it is time for an afternoon nap, and then he turns to Her Highness and says that it is time to return, and if she does not hurry, the Riel Palace will curse. However, the maid did not see the princess, and when they started looking, they thought that she had climbed into a place where she was not supposed to go. The maid understands that entering there is tantamount to death, and then he asks the maid why she didn't tell the princess about this. The maid thinks that this is bad, because the princess is in danger, and therefore they must immediately inform the butler. The Dream Garden is a restricted area in the palace. The emperor issued a decree that prohibits anyone from entering this place, and anyone who did not know about this prohibition was sentenced to capital punishment. No one knows why the king was so careful about the Garden of Dreams, but everyone knows that this is his sore spot, and no one dared to touch on this topic. At this time, the main character collected flowers and thought that now she could make pills. Suddenly, the emperor says that this is his garden, and then asks when the uninvited guest became allowed to visit him at any time. The emperor saw the girl's eyes and asks if she is the one he sent to the cold palace. Hearing this, the main character thought that her intuition was telling her that it was her and her father, Emperor Ares. His Majesty asks what she is doing in his garden. At this time, the girl thought that she had just come to her death. The emperor asks if she picked these flowers, and then says that she is quite brave. Hearing this, the girl thought that now the end had come for her. The princess touches her father and tells him to turn around and not peep without her permission. Then she quickly runs away and hides in the bushes. Seeing this, the emperor thought that he wanted to find out what tricks this girl was capable of. Riel turns to his highness and says that he is the butler of Princess Sei. And then he explains that it is his fault that the princess accidentally wandered into his dream garden. The butler announces that he intends to take full responsibility, and then he asks His Majesty to allow Princess Sei to be taken away. The emperor comes closer to the bush, and then a girl comes out from behind it and holds a wreath of flowers in her hands and tells His Majesty that everything is ready. The princess says that this is her gift for her first meeting with Daddy. The girl says that she is so happy because she finally met her father, and she was really looking forward to this meeting. And then she reports that, in the morning, she felt that she would definitely meet him today and therefore prepared a gift for Daddy. And she did not expect that he would come before she finished the gift. The princess saw that the palace was Riel also came to the emperor. Well, when she saw his frightened face, she assumed that today she had created a big problems. The emperor says that little girls can only do useless things. I heard that the main character thought that she wanted to beat him up. But when she saw that the emperor was reaching out to her, he thought that he wanted to hit her. His Majesty took the leaves from the princess's head and said that she was a slob, and she shouldn't be like that. Hearing this, the girl thought that she was wondering who made her like this. And then she says that she will listen to Daddy and therefore will be more careful in the future. The butler says that he will immediately take the princess to the bathroom. At this time, she thought that she wanted to leave here quickly. His Majesty turns to the girl and invites her to wait a little. And then she says that the flowers she picked for the wreath, does she know what their meaning is? The princess replies that she doesn't know. And at that time, I thought about how she could know everything, but looking at his evil gaze, she thought that he would not touch her. The emperor reveals that she is the first person to enter this garden without permission and will come out alive. Hearing this, the main character thought that she could have been saved. The butler turns to the princess and says that Her Highness was able to escape punishment, and in such a situation she was smart, and then suggests that next time she should be more responsible. The emperor says that tomorrow he wants to see the little princess in his palace. Hearing this, the main character thought that she knew that this demon would not leave her alive, and tomorrow she believed that she would definitely die. The next day in the imperial palace, the little lady thought that she could not escape no matter how hard she tried. Saya thought for a while and decided that the only thing she could do was pretend to be a cute girl since it worked yesterday. However, he understands that this may not work today. The butler says that the last time he walked through this hall was 6 years ago, when he was accompanied by Her Highness to meet His Majesty. And then she says that her mother was a confident, brave, and beautiful woman, and the emperor's most delightful rose. Riel says that, although the rose withered, she managed to plant a small family in this world. And then he took the princess in his arms and said that he was waiting for the day when this family would become a lush rose. He asks the princess if he is right in saying that this family should grow up to be a strong and brave rose. When the main character heard this, she thought that the butler was right, and she must gather all her confidence and courage. And no matter what happens, she must survive and become strong. The emperor, when he saw the butler with the princess, asked if she couldn't walk because she was so big. And then he claims that there is no need to pamper her like that. The princess explains that she wanted to meet Daddy as quickly as possible, and so she allowed Roel to carry her in his arms. After all, he believes that his legs are long, and this means that he walks faster. And at this time, the main character thought that she should not make him angry, because she thought that he should like her. The girl hugs Daddy's legs and says that they are even longer. But suddenly, she felt a cold gaze on her back. The butler addresses His Highness and informs him that Princess Sai has history lessons at 6, and therefore he hopes that His Highness will allow Her Highness to return on time. The emperor asks Riel if he is ordering him. The young master replies that he does not dare to do this. The princess turns to her father and asks him not to scold the Riel, and then explains that he said that she should study hard to become stronger than Daddy. And therefore, she attends lessons with pleasure, and also does not want to be late for them. His Majesty turns to the butler and says that if he is so worried, Then why doesn't he wait here? At this time, the main character thought that Riel said this because he was worried about her, but she understands that she should leave him for a while and leave with Dad, and she also believes that she should return as quickly as possible. While in the room with her dad, the girl thought that he was very silent, but having looked at him, we could say that he was handsome, but she is very sorry that he is a demon king. The princess does not understand where Dad is looking all the time, and when I saw in which direction his gaze was directed, I saw the grass that collects the spirit. Looking at the twisted stems and traces of cutting the grass, collecting the spirit, we can say that he took apart the wreath that the princess gave him and then planted it in vases. The emperor asks the girl that the flowers from which she made the wreath, if she knows what they mean. The main character heard this and thought that it seemed to her that the king was taking care of these flowers, but he doesn't understand what they mean to him. And then, I thought that when she entered his garden and picked the flowers, she must have really angered him, and it looks like today is punishment day. The little girl saw that the maid had brought sweets. Then she thought that maybe he had called her to drink tea with her, and then she thought that he might have decided to eat it alone, right in front of her with his daughter. And she wondered why her father was so cruel. The emperor tells the girl that he will tell her a story. She says that she really likes to listen to stories, and at that time, I thought that she didn't have a good feeling. The king says that this is a legend about Zeus, the king of the gods. The brothers grew up together, but the younger one died due to an accident, and the elder begged his father to resurrect his younger brother. But Zeus said that for this, the elder must give his life. The emperor asks if she were the older brother from this story. What would she do then? At this time, the main character thought that he wanted her to praise her older brother's act of self-sacrifice for her younger brother. The girl understands that in this story, he is Zeus. She is the older brother who must sacrifice his life for the sake of his brother, because he can only save one of the lives, and he wants her to voluntarily sacrifice hers for her brother. The princess thought about what she could choose, but understands that everything is already predetermined, and he thinks that if he says this, he will feel more confident. Saya says that if she were Zeus, she would not have allowed her older brother to do this. And then he says that if Zeus is as strong as her daddy, then he would definitely protect his children. After all, he believes that this way the two brothers can live happily. The princess says that only idiots would choose one, and then claims that she wants there to be two. Hearing this, the emperor does not understand who she is talking about now. The little lady reports that Riel told Sai that they live so happily and peacefully only because of her daddy's protection. And while daddy protects them, Saya believes that they will live in peace and tranquility. The girl says that when Saya grows up, she wants to become as strong as daddy, and she will be able to protect her brother and father. And then she looked at the emperor and thought that she was able to outwit him. The king says that Riel is truly brave because he taught her such flattering words. Hearing this, the main character thought that he looked like he liked it, and how many flattering words she said they should not go to waste. As long as he is in a good mood, she should act. The emperor looked at the princess and asked what she wanted to do. She replies that she is hungry and asks if daddy would like to feed her some cake. At this time, the main character thought that she had just said so many words and did not understand why he didn't feed her cake. After all, he reads this as a bargain, and besides, she thinks that she is trying to act as nice as possible, and she wonders if he will take pity on her. When the girl tried a piece of cake, she thought that it was truly royal, and its taste was 1 in a million. And then she thanked Daddy. The king says that if she liked it, then she can take everything for herself, and then he says that she will leave after she eats everything. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was only 5 years old, and she would not be able to eat all this. However, she understands that even if she were an adult, she would not be able to eat it all either. His Majesty turns to the princess and says that if she does not eat everything, he will finish her off. She understands that this is all brutal and too cruel, and he does not have a drop of humanity. After some time, I felt nauseated. The girl ate everything, and then she went out into the corridor and thought that Riel was still waiting for her, and she should hurry and look for him. Suddenly, a guy gets in the way of the girl and asks if she is the kind of girl who will sacrifice for her, and he is glad that he finally met her. Seeing the guy, the girl thought that it looked like this kid was her age, and he could move around the palace so freely. And he said that she was a victim, and therefore she believes that perhaps he is Bingo, her brother, the twin prince Kalen. The princess believes that this guy is her twin brother to whom she must give her life in the future, and so she understands that since she is a victim, she must get to know him better in order to find a way to survive. After all, he is the only son of the king and heir to the throne, and also with a curse placed on him. Kalen is the emperor's favorite, and everyone is afraid that something might happen to him, and therefore they take care of him 24 hours a day. Because of this, Prince Kalen becomes more and more spoiled, and therefore she understands that he has become the biggest headache in the palace. The princess doesn't understand why she is such a failure. After all, as soon as she escaped from the clutches of one demon, she immediately collided with another. And then the girl says that she shows respect for Prince Kalen. The boy approached the girl and said with admiration that he saw what the cursed eyes from the legends looked like. Kalen takes the girl's cheeks and says that they are actually beautiful and not as scary as adults say. At this time, the main character thought that this child really is the way people describe him, and in order to survive, she must tolerate him a little. But in the future, she believes that she will definitely teach him a lesson. Suddenly, the boy was called by his mother, who told him not to run so far away from her, and then he explains that his mother can't run that fast. The woman turns to the princess and asks if she is a Saya, and then he says that she has grown up. The main character understands that this woman is Hirsch's concubine, and although Arthur called her mom, in fact, she is not their blood mother. The children's blood mother died after her birth from dystonia, and Hirsch's concubine, stepmother Kalina. Among the harem of concubines, Hirscha is the most popular, and everyone says that she is kind, gentle, and caring, even with the servants. A concubine with such a status volunteered to take care of Kalina, and therefore the emperor did not refuse. Thus, Prince Kalen lived with his concubine Hirscha. And she's a damned girl who can't get close to the principal, so she was left in the cold palace. And so the princess has not seen her twin brother since birth. The main character reports that she shows respect to Her Highness Hirscha. However, the concubine does not even look in the direction of the girl, but turns to the boy and asks if he would like to drink tea, and then says that his mother will take him. The main character understands that her eyes are tied to the viburnum, and she does not pay attention to it, ignoring it. The princess does not attach any importance to this, since she has long been accustomed to such an attitude. But however, she does not understand why it seems to her that this concubine is not exactly as she is described. Say says that since the concubine and the prince are going to drink tea, she will not disturb them anymore. And at that time, I thought that she shouldn't be present in this campaign, and it was better to leave quickly. The twin brother asks the girl to wait a minute, and then says that he has changed his mind and now wants Saya to play with him. Callan says he wants Saya to become his mount. After all, Daddy told me that the legendary unicorn has a pink mane, the same as the girl's, and that means that she is a unicorn. Hearing this, she thought that he himself was a horse, and his whole family were also horses. The main character does not understand how he dares to say such a thing, since his sister was the most powerful in the past world, and she is the one who was respected by thousands. And now he wants her to become his horse, and doesn't understand why he is so inhumane. The girl thinks that if she agrees, he will constantly play with her, and if she agrees, then this wolf cub will become even more spoiled. The concubine is asked if she wants to play with Viburnum, and then he reports that horseback riding is not such a difficult game. And besides, she is the elder sister and must take care of her brother, and therefore she should know how much the emperor values his younger brother. Hirscha reports that if the king finds out that her brother is sad, then there is no telling how angry he will be, and then asks if she wants her father to get angry. At this time, the princess thought that she had finally seen her real face, and she forces her to become Kalina's toy. And she understands that if Kaline is sad, then her father will immediately sacrifice her, and therefore she has no other option. And the concubine speaks the truth, but under her gentle appearance, hides such a viper. The girl understands that if she offends her younger brother, then the viper will tell Daddy everything, and so she can't just wait for her death. The princess grabs the boy's hand and invites him to come with her. Hirscha asks in surprise where Saya is dragging him. The girl tells her not to worry, as they are just going to play. The concubine says that Saya is just an abandoned child, and her life will still go to her viburnum. And then she says that if her baby gets hurt, she will destroy her. The boy says that he wanted to play Kanika, and then asks where she is taking him. The girl asks what is interesting about horse riding, and then offers to go with her sister, because she will show him something that is much more fun, and she swears he'll love it. The girl reports that they are almost there. Kaylin wonders why she brought him to this place. After all, he doesn't understand what's so interesting about it. Saya asks him to be more patient, because she is going to show him something, and then he takes the handkerchief and throws it up the mountains. Kaylin looks in surprise at the scarf near which butterflies are circling and reports that it is very beautiful. The little lady says there's more to come. A few minutes later, butterflies began to circle around them, and the boy asks if it is magic. The main character thought that everything worked out for her, and fortunately, she found out about this child in advance. The curse made Kaylin weak. The magicians cast a magic circle on him to help Kaylin escape the orders of heaven. But the consequence of this was that Kaylin cannot learn magic. He might be in danger if he uses magic. Because of this, the Emperor forbade Kalina to study magic. However, Kaylin was fascinated by magic, and the main character heard that he often sneaked into the training place of the court magicians and watched them. One day, his father discovered that Kaylin was secretly trying to learn magic, and because of this, he was severely punished. But even so, he did not give up learning magic because he really wanted to learn. Saya thinks about how to please him. It is not necessary to become a unicorn, and she believes that you just need to make his wish come true. The girl cannot use the magic of this world, and this is just a trick that she created with the help of objects. And for the magic trick, I used a handkerchief with butterflies. The main character understood that she would be in a difficult situation when she met Kaylin, and so I prepared magic items for tricks in advance. With the help of these tricks, this sister always pleased her in her past life. Saya asks her brother if he liked it, and she wonders if magic isn't powerful and it's more fun than horse riding. Hearing this, the boy takes the girl by the hand and says that she is his little sister. At this time, she thought that he had changed his tone, and it was difficult to resort to. The brother asks her to teach him magic and explains that he really wants to learn it. The little lady asks if he wants to learn magic and then claims that it won't work. The young master does not understand why and asks about it. Lady explains that learning magic takes persistence, and she doesn't think he is ready and therefore won't teach him magic. Hearing this, Kaylin claims that this is all a lie, and then convinces her that he is ready and she should believe him. Say invites the boy to make 3 circles around this garden, and then says that if he can do this, then she will believe that he is worthy of learning magic. At this time, the main character thought that she was not promising him anything. After all, he understands that his father forbade him to study magic, and therefore she believes that she will not dare to offend the big demon. And besides, she does not know magic. The brother tells his sister not to worry, because he will definitely run 3 laps. Hearing this, the girl saw that he really ran, and she didn't think that her little brother was so stupid. But he understands that exercises for developing the body are also good. Big sister suggests not to run too fast, and then says that when he's done, he should let her know. And then he reminds him that he is forbidden to talk about magic to anyone. Callan agrees with the girl and says that he will definitely complete her task. A few minutes later, the tired boy says with delight that he has finally completed the race. Hersha saw the boy and asks what happened to him. Callan explains that he was running, and his sister told him that if he ran 3 laps around the garden, she would teach him M. And then he remembered that he should not say anything about magic and says that they were just playing catch-up. The concubine took the boy in her arms, and he said that he was tired. And at that time, he thought that he would find his sister next time. Hersha thought that it was the cunning girl who had fooled Callan, and he considers her self-confident, and she thinks that next time she will teach her a good lesson. At this time, the main character thought that the day had been very difficult, but she had finally returned and could now rest. The butler turns to the princess and says that she has not been home all day and has not yet attended classes. And then she says that before the start of the lesson, she must tell everything in detail about what happened there. Saya told the teacher everything in detail. He asks if that means she was delayed because she met Prince Callan, and that's why she is leaving without punishing the emperor for invading the Garden of Dreams. And then he says that if she lied to him, then her task will increase several times. The little lady assures him that she is telling the truth and that Daddy fed her cake. The butler asks in surprise whether this man can do such things, At this time, Saya thought that Riel seemed to be worried because he had such a reaction. After all, fortunately, nothing terrible happened, but she doesn't understand why it seems to her that there is some kind of enmity between Riel and her father, and she can only assume that they had a fight in the past. The main character spent the rest of the evening studying, but her affairs did not end there, and she understands that this is just a small garden, but now she uses this place for cultivation. The gardener allowed this place to be used as her secret base on the condition that she would look after the flowers. Recently, a little lady tried her hand at alchemy. She collected all the suitable cups and teapots from the cold palace. However, she understands that they are not very suitable. But if she is discovered, everyone will think that she is just playing. The girl believes that if she continues to try in alchemy, then she will succeed. But he understands that failure, without the use of flowers, without spiritual energy, is meaningless. Say muses that if she used the spirit-collecting herb, something might work. But he knows that even though his father didn't say anything, he still worries about these flowers, and they probably have a special meaning for him. The little lady does not understand how one could destroy the connection between the flowers and her father. However, she realizes that her last action was useless, and she feels disappointed when she thinks about it. Suddenly, it began to rain, and the princess thought that she had better forget, because it was useless anyway. And after she was reborn as a princess and learned of her destiny, she never gave up. She wondered, being so weak, whether she could change her fate. Saya tried to light a match, and then asks who will help her survive in this palace. Suddenly, the girl saw His Majesty, who asked what she was doing in this room alone. The princess replies that she loves flowers, and she explains that she recently began learning how to grow flowers from Mr. Gardener, and so she just wanted to try, but she didn't think that it would start to rain and trap her. At this time, the main character thought that she couldn't say what she was cultivating in this place. The king says that not only does she look like her, but they also like the same things, and then he takes the little girl in his arms and says that he will take her to her bedroom first. After all, girls shouldn't walk alone at night. Hearing this, the little lady thought that he wanted to take her himself, and then he turns to His Highness and says that he had a discussion with the ministers in the evening, and therefore he did not have a good rest. The servant informs him that he can arrange for the princess to be taken back, and informs him that His Majesty does not have to do this. Suddenly, the little lady felt warm and realized that her father was using magic. Sitting with her father in the carriage, the little princess thought that this silence scared her to death, and then she felt very cold because she was wet. The king gave the girl his cloak and then wrapped her up. At this time, the main character thought that his robe still contained his warmth. And then thanks Daddy. The girl does not understand why he is so kind to her, and then he suggests that maybe he is simply afraid that the victim will freeze and get sick. But when I looked at Dad, I saw that he quickly fell asleep. I think being an emperor must be difficult. The princess thought that this man could have killed her for the sake of the country a long time ago, but she doesn't understand why, looking at him, she feels suffering. And then she decides that while he sleeps, she will wipe the water from his forehead. After all, this is splendor, it needs to be well protected. Suddenly, the girl saw that she had stained her father's face with her own hands, and she doesn't understand how this happened, and assumes that, probably, when she was doing alchemy, she got her hands dirty and just wiped them on the emperor's face. The main character thought that if anyone saw this, the image and honor of the emperor would be destroyed, and when he notices that she did this, he will die 1,000 times over. The girl wipes her dad's face, and at this time he grabs her hand and says that they have already arrived, and takes her in his arms and carries her out of the carriage. At this time, she thought that it was good that she managed to wipe it off, because this time she was able to escape the gates of hell. Riel. When he saw the emperor, he was surprised, because there was a princess next to him, and then greeted His Majesty and His Highness. With the help of magic, the emperor handed the little princess into the hands of the butler, and then he says that because of his carelessness, the princess got lost outside, and this time he forgives him, and then informs him that in the future he should take better care of her. The butler says that he is obeying His Majesty's orders. The princess thanks Dad for taking her back. The emperor, when he came to his room, looked at the mirror and saw the dirty hands of his princess. At this time, the main character reflects on the fact that yesterday, because of her father scolded Riel, and only she is to blame for this, and therefore believes that she needs to apologize to him later. Suddenly, the maid opens the door and screaming says something bad has happened. And then, he says that, after the emperor returned home, he suddenly fell ill, and the ministers found out that he was accompanying the princess. Yesterday evening, they sent someone to punish her. The little lady is surprised to hear this information, and then asks how her daddy is feeling. The butler tells the little lady not to worry, since he has already found out everything, and the emperor has a common cold, which is not dangerous. Saya thought that he had caught a cold due to the cold, but he understands that even a simple cold is dangerous, and it is possible that this is due to the incident at night. Riel says that instead of worrying about him, she would rather think about herself. After all, someone was looking for her. The unknown man says that they were in no hurry, although he had been waiting for them for so long. And then he asks if the princess really doesn't understand what crime she has committed. This unfamiliar man, I took on the supreme mage Carson. Every inhabitant of the empire knows that the Ares Empire would not be so strong if it did not have this magician, and he is the most outstanding as well as the only great magician of the country. Mages not only use their power for the benefit of people, but also help the emperor expand his territory. Chiron, a powerful magician of the empire, as well as the first court magician of the emperor. He has high status and great power in the empire. He uses magic to throw handcuffs on the princess's hands. And then he says that, according to the imperial magicians, Princess Saya met with His Majesty last night, and so they believe that the emperor's illness is related to Her Highness. The girl explains that it was raining last night, when her father took her home, and he just had a cold, so she will visit her father later. The magician grabs his head with his hand, and then screaming claims that this is nonsense, and he asks how, according to Her Majesty, the emperor could get sick from simple rain. And then he says that the princess is too used to life in a cold palace that she completely forgot that she is a cursed girl who brings misfortune. The magician believes that the emperor fell ill because of her hearing. The main character thought that her father really got sick because of her, but she doesn't understand what it has to do with the fact that she is a cursed child. The girl thought that this man was the best magician of the empire, and looked more like a person who believed in omens better than anyone else. Carson reports that when the concubines and princesses found out about this, everyone became worried about him, and therefore many want to punish the culprit for whom the emperor fell ill as quickly as possible. The magician reports that the first concubine has a good heart, and therefore she decided not to punish Her Majesty, and she just wants the princess to listen to His Majesty's past orders and not leave the cold palace, and also avoid contact with His Majesty. Carson reports that the first concubine is a little uncomfortable because the princess is still small, and therefore she sent him here to put magic handcuffs on her. And then she claims that if she leaves the cold palace, the handcuffs will automatically tighten. And the main thing is that everything is fine, otherwise they will damage the body. Hearing this, the main character thought that the first concubine had sent him, and the great magician was obeying her orders. And these handcuffs are very tight, and she does not understand what the first concubine wants to say. After all, she knows that locking her in this room is not torture. Carson says that if it were not for the order of the first concubine, he would not have come to this dirty cold palace, because he understands that at this rate he too can catch a curse. The magician turns to Her Majesty and reports that he said everything that was needed, and therefore asks for forgiveness and leaves. At this time, the butler turns to the magician and says that he is a real. Carson reports that Hirsch's concubine mentioned him, and then he reports that yesterday he did not look after Her Majesty well, and therefore considers him guilty too. The magician says that in this way, he thinks that the butler will work for free for 6 months. Riel explains that this subject is aware of his behavior, but this child is difficult to keep track of. And then he asks Sir to say a few kind words, and perhaps this will help him forget this incident. The butler says that Sir definitely came to this cold palace on purpose, and he is probably tired. And then he says that he just brewed black tea, and if he doesn't mind, he can enjoy it. At this time, the main character was watching Riel, and she does not understand why he began to behave differently. The magician thinking that he brewed black tea just to enjoy it. And since he talked a lot today, even his mouth was dry. Well, when he drank a little, he immediately spat it out because the tea was heaped and salty. The butler explains that he completely forgot that His Excellency is a great magician and therefore drinks only the highest grade black tea. Well, since the cold palace is not very rich, that's why they only have this kind of tea. Riel informs the magician that the tea he drank was brewed with pickled bacon, which he found in the warehouse, but it was a little rotten, but also suitable for drinking. Hearing this, the magician became angry and asked how dare the pathetic servant give him tea with rot. The butler explains that they receive a small amount of provisions each year, and it is logical that they save the best things for the princess and give the guests what is left. And even if he treats her like she's damned, then in her eyes she is his main mistress, and therefore he will not let her be offended. Riel uses magic to destroy the handcuffs, and says that his magic handcuffs are not very good, as an ordinary servant like him can destroy them. Riel says that if Hirsch's concubine finds out about his poor performance, it will be bad. Hearing this, the main character claims that this is not bad, and then approaches the magician and asks him to put a spell on her faster. He screaming turns to the lady and says that she is an ominous child and did not touch him. Carson asks how the servant dared to unite against him, and then claims that they are vile. Suddenly, His Majesty appears in the room. He asks why the magician came. At this time, Carson did not expect the emperor to come to the cold palace, and at that time, he thought that he could not allow him to find out that the first concubine ordered to punish Sei. The magician reports that he is an insignificant person who passed by the cold palace and therefore decided to visit the princess. And then she reports that she and her butler just showed the princess a couple of magic tricks. However, Carson understands that he does not believe him and therefore believes that His Majesty cannot be deceived. And then he says that he remembered that he has things to do and therefore he will not bother them anymore and asks for forgiveness. The princess turns to His Majesty and says that she heard that he was ill and asks why he is not resting. Dad invites his daughter to go to her room, and then he turns around and leaves, and the little girl hurries after him. The emperor looked at the girl's hands and asked if Carson did this to her. At this time, the main character thought that perhaps he guessed that they would want to offend her somehow, and so her father came to her to help her, even though he is sick. And then in the princess, some questions arose, because before she thought that he was a cruel and soulless father, but their encounters over the past 2 days had changed her opinion of him. The main character does not understand why the emperor is gentle and caring with her, and at the same time, I thought that she had the answer because she was a sacrifice to save Kaylani. The butler knocks on the room and then comes in and apologizes for disturbing them. He turns to Her Majesty and offers to drink carefully the tea he made for her. The princess, when she saw that the emperor was going to drink tea, thought that this tea might be spoiled, and so she wanted Dad not to drink tea and somehow inform him about it. Suddenly, the girl remembered that she could not touch him. But when His Majesty noticed the girl next to him, she offers him a massage. The princess turns to Riel and says that she wants to massage Dad's shoulder and asks if he can put the tea away. The butler took the tea and then left the room and drank the cup himself. And at this time, he thought that it was not often that he had to brew this tea, and he did not understand why the emperor did not drink it. After all, he understands that this is a waste, and therefore believes that it is necessary to teach the princess the manners of saving things. At this time, Saya Izo kneads her father's neck with all her might, and then apologizes since she considers herself to be to blame for the fact that he got sick. The little lady invites Daddy to stay in her room and rest, and then he reports that she recently learned from Riele how to cook oatmeal and therefore asks to let her cook it for him today. The emperor turns to the girl and tells her that this is enough, and then takes her in his arms and says that her eyes are the same as hers. The girl asks in surprise if her daddy was talking about her mom just now. The father reports that her mother often massaged his shoulders. At this time, the main character thought that, because of her, Dad remembered Mom. His Majesty says that looking at her, he begins to remember the sad past. The surprised little lady asks her father why he is already leaving. But without hearing the answer, she does not understand why he suddenly became upset and believes that it is because she reminded him of his mother. The princess turns to the butler and asks why her father is always sad when she talks about her mother, and she wonders if her mother was bad. Riel replies that this is not true, and then explains that her mother was kind and gentle, and if she hadn't saved him, he probably would have been dead. And at that time, I thought that he left Alicia to die, and therefore considers him guilty, sir. At this time, the main character thought that, At first, she thought that it would be possible to improve her relationship with her father. But he understands that at least now, he probably won't sacrifice her, and he believes that their relationship is not improving at all. Thinking about this, the princess realized that she not only had a bad relationship with her father, but also accidentally started hostility with other people, and therefore she believes that her situation is getting worse. The girl believes that she angered the first concubine because of playing with viburnum, and therefore she decided to teach her a lesson. However, she understands that, this time, she managed to escape from Kalen, but he forced her to teach him magic. The princess reflects that if he finds out that she does not know how to cast magic, he will be offended by her. And that's why she doesn't like this twosome, because she will get into trouble because of them. The main character understands that she will not run in and cannot cultivate in the same way, and therefore she doesn't know any magic and doesn't understand why she met him. At this time, Saya realized that it was impossible to cultivate in this place, but she could learn magic, and so she believes that at least she may have a chance to escape. And she doesn't understand why she didn't think of this before. Suddenly, the princess fell as someone kicked her in the back, and then she felt someone pick her up, and the guy asks if she hurt herself. At this time, the main character thought that this child had just saved her. Saya remembers that Riel often told her tales about the princess and her knight. Every time the princess got into trouble, her knight appeared immediately and then saved her. And in the past, she thought they were just stories to keep children occupied. But he understands that not every fairy tale is a lie. The princess thinks it's strange, because she doesn't understand why she can't take her eyes off him. At this time, the guy thought that her eyes looked like precious stones, and they were very beautiful. And then she says that she is the princess of Saya, and says her name is Blair. And then she says that he was rude to her. The lady tells the boy to get up from his knees, and then grabs his hand, and tells him that now is not the time for politeness, since they need to run. The boy invites the princess to wait, and then says that he will handle it. And at this time, he pulls out a book and says a spell. And then the little monster turned into a squirrel. Seeing this, the princess thought that his magic was very magnificent. And then the boy goes up to the squirrel and apologizes, because he didn't mean to scare it. And he invites her not to be afraid, since he will not offend her. The blonde boy takes the baby animal in his arms and apologizes again since he suffered because of him. Seeing this, the princess thought that he was very caring. Suddenly, Carson turns to Blair and says that he is a brat, that he has finally found. And then he turns to the girl and asks what the sinister child is doing here. Suddenly, the magician screaming says that his buns hurt. The princess turns to him and asks what's wrong with him, because it seems to her that his buns are not in the best condition. Carson reports that it is all because of her, and then explains that, on the day the emperor returned from her palace, he sent a soldier to fetch him, and that soldier beat him with a 2-meter-long whip. And then he says that when he thinks about it, he feels worse. When the main character heard this, she thought that perhaps her father had found out about this, that Carson had hurt her. At this time, Carson thought that he was a great magician, and did not understand how he could let them know that he had been whipped by the emperor. But he understands that when he saw her, he immediately remembered it. The magician turns to Blair and tells him to quickly give him this demon, since he will not allow him to stay in this castle. The boy explains that he misunderstood, because this baby is tame, and then asks how he can be a demon's. Another magician reports that Blair summoned this demon from an unknown world when he practiced soul magic, and Master Carson ordered him to kill him, but he took and hid the demon. And then he says that it's good that they found him in time, because he suddenly attacked them. The magician says that not only is he causing trouble in the Academy of Magical Research, but he also snuck into the castle, and only he is to blame. Blair explains that he called him and he is in charge of him. And then he says that he attacked them because he was scared, but he is not the least bit dangerous. Carson says that this is absurd, because the job of magicians is to protect the kingdom, and it does not matter to them that it was self-defense. And so he must take care of any threat to the kingdom, and he as his best disciple must listen to him unquestioningly. The supreme magician turns to the boy and says that he constantly creates problems, and therefore he should not be a magician. And then he says that he must expel him from the magical association. The princess heard this screaming saying that magicians are such weaklings, because there is a whole crowd of them, and they could not defeat the little demon, and therefore considers this funny. Saya reports that unlike other magicians, he bravely stood up for her and was even able to catch the demon. The head magician's assistant says that this guy has been good at evil soul magic since childhood, and that's why he easily subdued the demon. And then he says, screaming, that they never use such evil magic. The princess says that he just protected her, and he took full responsibility for the summoned demon. And therefore he believes that, unlike them, who just wanted to kill this demon, he is much better than them. The girl says that if they ask her who really needs to be expelled from the academy, she will answer that it is them. At this time, the magician thought that this girl was only 5 years old, but she was so cunning. And then it is reported that he admits that he is talented in magic, but this demon poses a threat, and this guy is protecting him, and so they both have to leave. And he, a great magician, cannot allow such a threat to the castle. The princess assures that it is not his business whether it is dangerous. And then she turns to the beast and says that if she is not mistaken, then he is a Manjushri. The little animal screams in surprise and asks where she is from and how she knows their language. At this time, the main character thought that she thought so, since he is not a demon, but an ordinary beast from her world. And this is a Manjushri cub, and it seems that he really came from the world of cultivators. The girl remembers that in a past life, when she was a cultivator, she learned the language of monsters and did not think that she would need it in this life. The boy says in surprise that she spoke to him, and this is amazing. At this time, Carson thought that he didn't even understand what the demon was saying, but this damn princess was somehow communicating with him, and so now he understands why she is an evil child. The little beast asks if she is a cultivator. The lady replies that her spirit has moved into the princess's body. Hearing this, the little animal is delighted and claims that she is a divine sister who should help him, and then he reports that he was summoned to this world. But then these magicians called him a demon, and then they wanted to finish him off, and he attacked them in order to escape. The princess explains that the more he attacks them, the more they fear him, and then the main character turns to the boy and says that he probably called him by accident and therefore did not want to hurt him. And then he says that if he continues to cause trouble, then this boy will get into trouble too. The beast asks the divine sister what he should do since he really wants to live. The girl tells him not to be afraid, and then tells him that she will help him. The princess invites the boy to discuss something, and then tell him in his ear. The main character turns to the magicians, and screaming says that she wants to announce something to them. Saya reveals that she has decided that this monster will become her pet, and she also chose Blair as her guardian knight, and therefore he believes that now no one can kick him out. The guardian knight is a special knight for the safety of the imperial family. The Aries Empire has mandated that every member of the imperial family has the right to choose a guardian knight from a magical or knightly association. The guardian knight is responsible for protecting the imperial family, and therefore has a special status. The supreme mage thought that he was the guardian knight of the first concubine Hershey, and she constantly burdened him so much that he fainted. But he understands that, thanks to this title, he can strengthen his position as the first magician in the empire. Caster Sen thinks that this brat Blair has a good talent for magic, but in the magic association he has the lowest position, and therefore he can easily shoot him down. And if he becomes a guardian knight, it will raise him several levels, and therefore, in the future, he will not be able to shoot him. The archmage turns to the princess and informs her that choosing a guardian knight is a difficult matter, and then he explains that Blair is just a student and he doesn't think he can handle the responsibilities. And then he invites her to postpone this matter. The princess claims that she wants Blair to become her guardian knight, and then he says that now he is weak, but he has them. How wonderful they are, teacher. And then argues that if they cannot teach him, then they should think about their abilities. At this time, Saya thought that, thanks to this, Carson would not be able to expel Blair. After all, he understands that he received a little flattery, he immediately forgot about everything, and he actually lost to a 5-year-old girl. At this time, the magician's chief assistant thought that their teacher was too naive. Carson reports that he will not speak on the topic of choosing a guardian knight, but this monster is unknown to them. And then he explains that that's why they can't leave him, because they don't know whether he's dangerous or not. Say took the little animal in her arms and says that this cutie will become her pet, and she takes him under her wing. And then she says that, if they dare to touch him, she will tell Daddy everything, and he will give them a good spanking. The magician reports that since Her Majesty says so, he need not worry and entrust the demon child to her. And then he says that he has business and leaves them. At this time, Carson thought that he did not understand why he had the feeling that he was just a toy in her hands. The assistant asks the magician's teacher if he will really allow Blair to become the night's guardian. And then it is reported that he knows that this boy is black among the whites, and he wonders if he has been planning to expel him from the academy for the last few years. Carson replies that it is the princess's decision and then asks what he can do. And then she says that since this boy wants to become her knight, then let him become. At this time, the main character thought that they had finally left. Blair turns to the princess and says that he is grateful to her for saving him. And then she says that she must take back her words that she chose him as her knight, because he believes that he is not worth taking the place of her knight. After all, she understands that the guardian knight must provide her with protection, but he is just a student. The princess asks if he didn't just protect her and save her from this baby, and therefore suggests that he should not be modest, and then asks if he would like to become her knight. The boy replies that he wants to, and the little squirrel screaming reminds his sister that she is still here and suggests not to forget about her. The girl says that she wants to make him her pet, and therefore does not understand how she can forget about him. Blair asks Her Highness in surprise if she can talk to this baby. The lady explains that she is a cursed princess, and therefore an unusual person, and she thinks that she must have some kind of skill. At this time, the main character thought that she could not say that she had been reborn, and was the strongest cultivator in her world in her past life. Say says that this baby was very scared, and therefore offers to take him to the palace. Suddenly, the main character falls, and the knight catches her, and then asks what happened to Her Highness. The princess explains that she seems to have sprained her ankle when she fell, and she had not previously felt any pain, but as soon as she walked, her ankle made itself felt. And then she says that everything is fine since her palace is nearby, and she doesn't have far to go to it. The boy takes the girl in his arms, and she screaming asks what he is doing. Blair explains that she sprained her ankle, and that's why she can't walk. The guy put the girl on the swing and then looked at her leg and said that it was very swollen. Blair says he's sorry he won't be very good at healing magic. And then he asks the princess to wait a little. The knight used his magic, and at this time, the main character was surprised, because it looked very cool. Say doesn't understand why, but as soon as she saw this boy, she felt something familiar. And I thought that these were just mind games. The guy says that, to be honest, he recently heard rumors and His Majesty. And then he says that many people say that there is a princess in the palace who was born with ruby eyes, and so when he saw her, he immediately recognized her. The boy reports that everyone calls her cursed only because of the color of her eyes, but he always thought that this was too much. After all, today, when he met her, he realized that she was a smart and kind child, because she helped him today. The princess says that, to be honest, she doesn't mind that she is called cursed, because she understands that if it weren't for this feature, she might already be dead. When the girl looked at the guy, she thought that he didn't seem to know what fate she was doomed to, and therefore he believes that it is better not to say anything to him, and then he says that she will be strict with him since he is her guardian knight. Blair doesn't understand how this is possible, since he was born into a poor family, and becoming the princess's knight is too great an honor for him. Say says that she heard that only children born into a family of marquises can join the academy, and then he asks that if he is from a poor family, then what is he doing in this place? The guy explains that he is from a family of marquises that has flourished for many centuries, and when he was still a baby, his parents went on a campaign with the king where they died nobly. Blair says his father was the backbone of the family after his death. Close relatives who found out about it tore up their property, and even the allowance issued by the emperor was stolen. The boy says that this is why their family fell apart because of this. No one wanted him, and he was almost thrown out. But fortunately, the emperor learned of his situation and enrolled him in the Magic Academy as a student. Hearing this, the main character thought that her father had helped him in the past, but she did not think that he, constantly busy with the affairs of the empire, could take the time to help the child of his fallen subordinates. The princess says that he is from a noble family, and it is not surprising that Carson said that he has a talent for magic. The boy objects and says that he is only good at soul magic, which was passed down in his family, but you are not an expert in other types of magic. After all, the magic of the soul is associated with death, and therefore most magicians consider it evil and disgusting to study because of this. Teachers and fellow students do not like it. Heard this, she thought that this boy was in too much trouble, but she doesn't understand why it seems to her that Carson is afraid of Blair's talent. The guy says that becoming her guardian knight is a great honor for him, and therefore he will sacrifice his life for her. And then he turns to Her Highness and says that from now on, she can order him. The princess says that he doesn't need to be so serious, but now she has something to do, and he must help her, and then asks if he can teach her magic. Blair was surprised and said that he would carry out any of her orders, but he could not train her to do so, and explains that His Highness the Emperor issued a decree that prohibits teaching her and brother Kalen magic. Upon hearing this, girl got very angry and then asked why not. And at that time, I thought that her plan had failed again. The main character understands that she cannot give up, and in order to survive, she must find a way to get her father to teach her magic. Suddenly, the butler runs up to the girl and tells her that they must leave the palace as soon as possible. Saya does not understand what happened and why they need to leave the palace, and asks about it. Riel explains that a deadly epidemic broke out in the imperial city and many people died. The court physician had just examined the emperor and found out that it was not a cold, but that he had contracted it while inspecting the city a couple of days ago. The butler reports that the emperor fears that the epidemic will spread throughout the palace, and he has ordered everyone to evacuate. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was a past woman who had never known her father's love. And in her past life, she was a strong cultivator, but at first, she was an abandoned child who was picked up by a sect. The girl remembers that they raised her, and she doesn't even know what her parents looked like, and she always wanted to be loved by her father like other children. But she understands that she asked for too much until she was reborn as his daughter. The butler reports that this epidemic is unlike others. The patient initially suffers from a fever, and if the condition worsens, he may begin to cough up blood or even have a heart attack. Many people living near the imperial city have become infected, and there are casualties among them, and in addition, many people in their palace have also become infected. And so His Majesty ordered the imperial palace to be isolated, but those who were not infected must leave the place, and His Majesty would remain with the infected. Many imperial families left the imperial palace, and then he reports that His Royal Highness will not leave, and he hopes that if she is brought there, she will try to persuade His Highness to leave together. The butler informs her that their lives are more important right now, and he advises her not to bother with His Royal Highness and to leave the palace right now. Hearing this, the main character thought that she could run away, something she had wanted ever since she was reborn as a princess. But he doesn't understand why he can't make up his mind then. Say reflects that she only sees him as a cold-blooded man who could kill her at any second, and she doesn't see him often, but his gentle manners made her feel like a father's care. The main character reflects that perhaps she already knows the answer, hidden in the depths of her heart, but in his own way he always cared for her and always protected her. And that's why she doesn't understand how she can leave her father when he needs her. The princess turns to Riel and tells him to take her to her dad, since they will leave this palace with Colleen. Hearing this, the butler screams and explains that His Majesty is ill, and it is too dangerous for Her Royal Highness, and then claims that she should take his advice. The girl insists that the Pope asked everyone to leave the imperial palace so that fewer people would become infected, and so he thinks that he will worry if Kalen stays with him. After all, she understands that Dad must have his own reasons for asking her, and no one else. The princess claims that it will be dangerous for Colin if he stays here, and therefore it is her responsibility as an older sister to keep him safe. Saya reflects on the fact that even if she wants to sacrifice herself for Colin, it will not be his fault, so she can think about how to avoid it later. After all, she understands that, as a former cultivator, she will not be able to bear it if she leaves him. The boy turns to the butler and says that he must let her go, and then he says that he will protect the princess with magic, and she will not become infected. Riel looks at the guy who is holding a small animal in his hands and asks if they are like that at all. The princess explains that he is her guardian, and this cutie will be her pet. Hearing this, the butler is surprised and asks why Her Majesty didn't tell her to get a pet. And then he says that it is becoming increasingly difficult to teach her discipline. The lady explains that it was an urgent matter, and she will talk about it later. Riel turns to the princess and says that if she behaved well from an early age, then she should have developed her own common sense when she grew up, and then reveals that he was too strict with her in the past. The butler says that he trusts that Her Highness will know her limits, and then he offers to go get Prince Kalen and immediately leave the palace. When they arrived at the palace, the main character saw her father and immediately went up to him and asked how he was feeling. At this time, the princess saw her brother Kalen and asked if he had been with Dad all this time. The brother explains that he heard that his father was infected, and his mother wanted him to immediately leave the imperial palace, but he could not leave his father like that, and so he came here in secret from her. At this time, the emperor turns to the Saya and orders her to immediately take Kalen away from here. And then it is reported that it does not matter what he says to him, since he will not even move. And so he believes that she, as an older sister, should try to persuade him. The little lady says that she will listen to Dad and take Kalen, and then asks how he is feeling, and explains that Saya is very worried about him. The boy screaming says that he is also worried about his father. The emperor says that of their 11 children, they stand out the most, and one of them is always mischievous, and the other one is very smart, despite his young age, and so he never knows what she is planning in her little head. His Majesty says that this epidemic is very dangerous, and anyone else would leave the palace immediately to save their lives. And so to understand that the two of them are probably the only ones who care about her, and they both must leave, not ignore his orders. Kalen screaming says that he does not want to leave, but wants to stay with his dad. Saya argues that they can't do this, because you'll want them to leave because she's afraid they'll get sick. The girl hugs her brother and explains that Dad will worry even more if he stays. And then he asks that if this happens, how will Dad be able to rest in peace? The emperor turns to his daughter and says that he knows that she is a sensitive child, and then asks her to take care of her brother and return only when the epidemic is over. His Majesty says that the two of them are the future of the Ares Empire, and nothing should happen to them. The princess says that she will listen to Dad, but Dad must promise her that he will get better. The emperor says that Dad promises her this, and then he touches the window. Saya says that it is already time to leave, and invites them to leave. They walked without stopping at the entrance of the palace. There was a station where everyone had to be examined, and only the healthy could leave the palace, and those who showed symptoms of the epidemic were forced to remain in quarantine. The guards say that the imperial concubine ordered them to look after the viburnum when she noticed that he was missing. She then left for the summer palace, in which they began to prepare temporary housing. After they learned that Kalen was with them, the guards instructed them to return Kalen to the imperial concubine. The main character reflects on the day that they were preparing to leave the imperial palace after the inspection, and they were even examined before they left the imperial palace. But the girl felt that they were forcibly quarantining those who have symptoms because the father did not want to allow the virus to spread. The imperial palace became the most dangerous place, but father was still left behind everyone. The magician reports that despite the fact that Her Royal Highness communicated with His Majesty, she was not infected and therefore can be sure that the magical tests are completely accurate, and she can now leave the palace. Suddenly, the woman started screaming that she was the second princess of the Ares Empire, and she didn't understand why she had to stay to die in the imperial palace with these fucking infected people. The magician explains that they found symptoms of an epidemic in her, and according to His Majesty's orders, she must remain in the painting. The lady reports that this is nonsense and she is not sick. At this time, the main character does not understand how one can be so capricious in such times. After all, she understands that lack of cooperation will only bring harm to her and everyone. The second princess screaming says that if they want to prevent anyone from leaving, they must stop this damned girl. And then she orders the knights to grab her. The butler asks the knights what they want to do. Saya asks how she could get infected when she hasn't seen her father for several days. Michelle, the second princess, reports that this epidemic of misfortune that brought to the empire is a cursed girl, and she does not understand how they can just let her go. And then he invites the magicians to use it for experiments to find a cure. Blair states that according to examination, Her Royal Majesty is completely healthy. The butler asks to ask his guards to move away from Her Royal Majesty, and then says that she will regret it if she doesn't. The lady claims that she is a princess and asks how he dared to touch her, a slave of a cursed girl. And then he says that she will arrange a terrible death for him. Michelle states that she definitely won't stay here, and then says that however Saya should enjoy her stay in this place, and grabs the little lady's hand. Kaylin turns to the lady and asks how she dared to touch her, and then tells her to let her go now. Michelle, when she saw the prince, reports that she heard that the first concubine left the castle a long time ago, and then asks if he didn't leave with her. The prince, crying out, reminds the lady that he told her to let his sister go, and then he orders her to kneel in front of him right away. Michelle immediately knelt down, and at this time other people thought that it didn't matter what they said, because the second princess was still older than him, and they don't understand how she can just bow down to him. But His Highness is the only heir of the king, and he has the highest status after the ruler. At this time, the main character thought that she would never have thought that Callan would stand up for her, but therefore he understands that his manifestation of anger is mirror-like to his father's, and they are the real father and son. At this time, Michelle thought that this little scoundrel really forced her to kneel in front of everyone for the sake of that damn girl, and she doesn't understand how majestic she is. The second princess no longer wants her greatness. Michelle explains to Kalina that she was not trying to offend Saya and wanted to leave, but her father will be lonely if he stays on his own, and so she invited Saya to stay and keep her father company. Kaylin says that if his sister Saya stays, then he will also stay and keep her company. The butler tells him to let him tell his mother that the prince has accepted the second princess's offer to voluntarily remain in quarantine in the palace. After all, despite the fact that the magicians have already confirmed that neither His Highness nor Her Highness Saya are not infected. Michelle heard this, screamed, objected, and said that the palace was already infected, because she understands that if the first concubine finds out that she invited them to stay in the palace, then she will never forgive her. And then she started coughing. At this time, people say that it looks like the second princess has been infected, and then they hurried away from her so as not to get infected. The little prince turns to his sister and tells her to stay away from them, as she might infect them. Riel says that this is already correct, because the second princess is already sick, and she should have stayed in this palace for observation and isolation. Saya claims that even if sister leaves the castle right now, she will not be able to cure her illness. And then she says that she will harm not only others, but also herself. Hearing this, Michelle says that there is no way she will stay here to wait for her death. And then she turns to the young master and says that even if this girl is his twin sister, then she is still just a victim who will sooner or later give her life for him. The second princess reports that, moreover, this damned girl will bring trouble to his future empire. And then she asks why he is protecting her. Hearing this, the main character thought that her words were the complete truth, and therefore she believes that in the eyes of Prince Kalan, she is really just a victim. Kalan explains that this is not why he is protecting her, and then he takes his sister by the hand and says that she is his twin sister, and only he has the right to offend her. The young master reports that he was quite annoyed when he saw her bullying her. At this time, the little lady thought that it sounded strange that only he had the right to offend her, but he understands that in his eyes, he still sees her as a sister. The girl understands that although Prince Kalin is usually not very reasonable, what is important is that he continues to stand up for her, and that is why her heart is so warm. Kalan turns to his sister and invites her to stop talking to her, since he does not want to get infected from her. And then he takes the girl, and they leave together. Michelle, screaming, turns to the prince and asks to listen to his sister, and reports that she is not sick, and therefore asks to go with him. At this time, the knights grab the princess and ask her to wait a minute, since she is already infected and must remain in this castle for quarantine. And then they ask her to be sure that the magicians will soon find a cure for this disease. The second princess, screaming, says that she does not want to be here alone, escaped the advances of the second princess. The guys in the carriage left the imperial palace and headed to the temporary palace. Where did the rest of the royal family who were not infected go to avoid the epidemic? At this time, Saya realizes that this is the first time she has left the castle, but she would never have thought that they would see such a tragic situation. The epidemic had already spread throughout the imperial city, and they saw infected people everywhere they went, and some people were already dying due to the disease, and their eyes were full of helplessness and fear. Seeing how the empire that he so painstakingly protected the father is ruined by the epidemic, and these terrible living conditions of the people, then the main character thought that if she had cultivation abilities, she would be able to help them. However, the princess realizes that now, despite her sympathy for them, she is absolutely useless. Blair turns to Her Majesty and says that he cannot go to the castle with her and therefore must leave them for a while. Hearing this, the princess asks why he is doing this and wonders where he is going. The boy explains that he is like a magician and therefore cannot hide in the face of this disaster. He explains that the National Magic Library is nearby, and so he could find a cure for this disease. Blair realizes that while he is no better at healing magic, he can still try. And if he finds a cure for it, then he will be able to help everyone. The butler says that despite the fact that they have magical protection, it is still dangerous to walk on the street. And besides, he cannot be that useful himself. Saya says that she will also come with him and help him, and then explains that all they did was watch people suffer from this disease along the way, and so she can no longer just stand by and watch it all happen. The girl says that she also wants to help, and even if she can't help much, then there must be at least a ray of hope. And besides, she understands that if they can't find a cure, it means they can't save Daddy. Kalen says that he also wants to help. The butler says he can't let them get away, but he understood that, even so, he could not go against the decision already made by the prince. Blake offers to go in with the hope that they can find a cure quickly. When they open the door, Saya says that it looks like this place is being used as a temporary medical site. The sick mage reveals that he thought using a magical shield would prevent the virus from spreading, but realizes that this does not seem to be the case. After all, more and more magicians are becoming sick every minute, and so he does not understand what they should do now. Blake says he never would have thought the pandemic would be so bad, and if this continues, the epidemic will spread very quickly, and they must hurry up and find a cure. The butler says that there are a lot of sick people in this place, and therefore it is too dangerous for the prince and princess to be here. After all, he understands that so many magicians have already fallen ill in order to save infected people, and now is not the time to sit back, and they must act quickly. The Supreme Mage is surprised because he saw many sick patients, and then he tells the guys to go in first since he has to sterilize himself outside of this contaminated place. Carson orders to quickly replace the infected magicians and continue to study the virus. At this time, the main character thought that it looked like he was here to coordinate the magicians in this situation, and if he discovered that she and Kalen came here, then he would certainly send them to the quarantine palace. Saya asks, what should they do now? Because he understands that they cannot find the information and they cannot be allowed to catch them. And then he says that the library is very large and asks if they can hide there. But when the princess opened the door to the library, she saw that there was a room for small sick children, and then she says that she has a good idea. At this time, the butler thought that he had a bad feeling. Carson irritably says that they do not have enough medicine and offers to quickly bring more. But suddenly, everyone was surprised when they saw that the nurse carried the little guys in her arms. At this time, the main character thought that she had done a great job, and they would not be able to detect them while they were under disguise. Carson turns to them and tells them to stand because they look familiar. The chief magician says that perhaps they met in a dream, and then reveals that his name is Carson. The nurse says that this rose is very beautiful, but she is sorry that they are busy, and therefore offers to talk next time. At this time, the chief magician thought that he had love at first sight, and then asks if she thinks they can have dinner later. The woman tells him not to worry, as she will invite him for green tea, and how it all ends. At this time, Carson thought that this was a nurse probably new, and her voice was irresistible, and therefore he believed that she would soon become his. It was a risky decision, but so they were able to get deeper into the library. The main character understands that now is not the best time to search for information, since they decided to wait for the night, and when everyone falls asleep, then they can search for information in secret. However, since they did not want to waste time, they decided to observe the condition of the patients, and then they noticed that the magicians were using magic to lower their body temperature and did not understand why they were still hot. As soon as night fell, the magicians went to rest, and this gave them a chance to search for information. The guys met many guards, but they safely avoided them and then got to the healing magic department. The main character understands that this area is constantly monitored by guards, and therefore they need to be careful. Blair turns to Her Majesty and says that her servant has found several suitable books for her. When Saya looked at the books, she realized that they were very simple, since they had few words and many pictures. And therefore, he understands why he said that these books were suitable for her, because he was afraid that she would not be able to read because she was small. The boy turns to Her Highness and asks how she could understand them, since he didn't think she had already read such difficult magical books. The princess explains that, although she does not know magic, she can still find information about the epidemic. And then he says that Real taught her to read and write, and naturally, she has no problems reading books. Blair is surprised to say that Her Highness can read well at age 5, which is why she thinks Real is so stern. And then she says that her servant is too worried and will immediately start reading. The boy realizes that Her Majesty is so amazing, and therefore he must work harder. Seeing him, the main character thought that his magic was great, and he read so many books. Blair turns to Her Highness and asks what happened, and then wonders if she can understand something. The girl explains that she believes that the more books they read, the faster they will be able to find cures. The servant invites her to go to him, since they will read it faster together. Suddenly, Saya noticed that the books in the library were moving on their own, and so she thought that there might be a ghost there. But suddenly, she saw Kalina and asked what he was doing there. He says that he wants to help, but understands that he did not try very hard to study, and therefore does not understand difficult books, and also does not know how to use magic. Saya wonders if that's why he decided to help with the books. Blair turns to His Highness and says that he is great because he was able to sort the books into categories and therefore save them time. The sister thanks Kalen because he is great. And at this time, Saya thought that it was surprising that Viburnum had such a side. After all, he is a flying copy of his father. The boy reports that they read all of this, but did not find anything useful. The girl reports that there is another book on top. Kalen explains that he is small, and therefore could not reach her. And even the ladder did not help him, and therefore he did not touch her. Blair looked at the book, and then says that it was written by a great magician, but unfortunately, no one in the Empire can understand this text. The main character saw that this book was written in a language from the world of cultivators, and she suggests that it seems that this great magician had already been reborn into people before she came here, and then asks the boy if she can look at the book. Blair thought that Her Highness might understand the text. When the princess opened the book, she thought that there was a way to transform magical power into spiritual power. She wondered who left this book in the past. The girl read that this book contains information about medicines that will help fight the epidemic, because he understands that they have been here for a long time, and any hitch could cost them dearly, and therefore they should find the information they need faster. The main character reports that she is confident that this book contains what they need, and after a night, they were able to find something, and it seems their efforts were not in vain. Suddenly, the butler heard people coming towards them, and then, with the help of magic, he transformed himself into a knight. And when he heard a knock on the door, he asked who was there. The Supreme Mage reports that he is the knight and asks why he is here at such an hour. Carson screaming replies that it is none of his business and offers to continue patrolling. He also reminds him not to relax while performing his duty. The knight says that he understood everything and will not bother him anymore. At this time, the butler thought that Mr. Carson probably had an appointment with that hot nurse, and so he came to the library at night, and therefore cannot interfere with his romance. Riel thought about how he was so easily fooled, and he had the feeling that Carson was rather immodest. The butler knows that investigating the epidemic is dangerous for the princess, but she is risking her life for a good cause, and the only thing he can do is help her. But he understands that it was close, and fortunately, they were not interrupted. Saya reports that she found some information about the epidemic in this book. The butler asks if Her Highness is sure. The princess explains that patients develop a fever when they first become infected. They begin to cough, and even cough up blood. And if their condition worsens during the critical stage, bloody spots begin to appear on the skin. The main character reports that the symptoms of those infected with the virus are exactly the same as in the book, and the disease is called cataleptic asphyxia. The girl thought that this disease appeared and cultivator in the world. According to the records, a terrible epidemic once appeared in the cultivator world. At first, those infected had a fever and cough, but then it became difficult for them to breathe. They could not move and died from suffocation. People in the cultivation world called this disease cataleptic asphyxia. Nobody knew where she came from, but fortunately, several great cultivators had found priceless resources in that world, and they began to work together to make a miracle cure that would destroy the epidemic. The girl understands that these resources cannot be found in this world, but fortunately, the author of this book found alternative ingredients. Saya reveals that they will be able to make a cure for cataleptic asphyxia once they find the ingredients listed in this book. Blair hears this and asks what they are waiting for then, and then suggests they go gather the ingredients now. Saya suggests they split up and search, and then try to make a medicine based on this formula. At this time, the main character thought that they had found a solution, and she wondered how her father was feeling. The servant informs His Majesty that they are ready to distribute supplies for the construction of isolation chambers as he ordered, and then he says that with his condition, he should not be involved in government affairs, and invites him to rest a little. His Majesty replies that he is fine, and since as king he is in charge of the empire, and therefore tells the servant to leave. When His Majesty was left alone, he thought that he could not hold out for long, and then he remembered that he could not break his promise that he made to his children, and he decides that he has to go through with it no matter how difficult it is. After a day of hard work by sunset, the guys had finally found all the ingredients. Blair reveals that they have red herb, a magic crystal shard, dragon tree fruit, and a magic flower. The girl does not understand what they should do to you, since they still need coal ash from the magic furnace. The butler says he just so happens to have some. Heard this, the girl says he is amazing, Riel, and then thanks him and asks where he got it from. The butler explains that it just happened that way, but the main character noticed traces of burns on his hands. The boy says that now that they have all the ingredients, he is wondering what they should do next, and asks Her Highness about it. The girl, little by little, pours all the herbs into a large cauldron, and at the same time, I decided to joke a little, saying that now it was the Fluffy's turn. Saya grabs the guard knight and says she needs his help, and then asks if he can transfer his magic to the Fluffy one. The lady explains that the book says, so Blair thought that she understood Fluffy's language, and the language in which the book was written, and therefore thought it incredible. After all, she has a couple of amazing secrets. The guy realizes that he doesn't have time to think about it, and then he shares his magic with the Fluffy one. According to the book, Leonie Lynx had a hidden ability that absorbed the magic of this world and converted it into chi. At this time, the butler watched the girl and knew that he had never taught her magic and did not understand how she could do it. Blair thought that the princess's magic seemed very powerful, and he had never seen anything like it. Kaylin asks Saya if she is finished and wonders if they will do it. The princess explains that magic is not enough, and she needs a little more. And a few minutes later, he reports that they almost succeeded, and they will do it. Blair tries his best to share his magic, and at this time the butler comes up to him and says that he forgot about him, and then he touches it with his hand, and the magic increases. Her Majesty says it's great because they finally made them, and she shows the pills, and then the girl faints. Blair thought that the princess had contracted cataleptic asphyxia, and she got infected yesterday while visiting the sick. The butler suggests that the princess not worry since he will classify her as a magician. Saya objects and says that there is no need to do this because she believes that she got sick in time and offers to give her pills since she can test if this medicine works. Kaylin turns to his sister and asks how she can check the pills so carelessly and then tells her to spit them out. The butler says that it is too late because she has already swallowed it. And when he looked at the girl, he said that she seemed to be in pain, and therefore believed that she should immediately be classified as a magician. Blair tells him to stand there because he believes the pill has worked, and all the symptoms have disappeared, and the princess has recovered. The main character says that their hard work was worth it, and the pills really help, and she got sick at the right time. Kaylin says that his sister is wonderful and amazing. Riel doesn't think she took her health seriously enough, and then he says that he decided that every day, he will make her a pot of juice with a pile of pumpkin and celery to boost her immunity, because she believes that this way she will not get sick and will not take pills at random. At this time, the main character thought that she knew that he was worried about her, but she also thought that this was too much. Saya says that because he said that she can conclude that he also takes his health quite seriously, and then asks why he has a burn on his hand. The girl claims that it was no coincidence that he had coal ash from a magic furnace, and then says that he got burned when he mined it, and asks if she is wrong. And he's also worried that he's probably in a lot of pain. The butler reports that this is nothing for him. After all, the coal ash from the magic furnace has magical resistance, so he had to extract it with his bare hands, and he ended up getting burned. At this time, the princess thought that he always does anything for her, and without saying a word about it. And she remembers that he never tells her he's hurt, because he doesn't want her to worry. Saya tells him not to think only about how to take care of her, and then he claims that he should also take good care of himself. And therefore, she invites him not to forget to change the bandage every day and informs him that she will remind him of this. After the guys confirmed the benefits of these pills, they decided to tell her father about it. After all, in this way, they could use all the national power to make even more pills. After all, there were many sick people who needed medicine to save their lives. But before they could leave the brawler, Carson stood in their way again. The chief magician reports that he has fallen ill and is losing his vitality, and then asks them to help him. When the Lord saw him, they thought that it seemed that he had never lost them. The little prince turns to Mr. Carson and says that the special medicine that his sister made can cure him. The surprised chief magician asks His Highness where he is here from, and he wonders how he allowed him to eat an unknown pill. And then he says that these are children's toy pills that do not work, and therefore he will definitely die. At this time, the king looked at his hands and saw that the red spots had disappeared, and then reported that he had recovered, and the pill was working. Carson offers to give him the formula and help him make even more pills, since in this way, he believes that he will stop this epidemic. At this time, the guys thought that they would not pay attention to this, since they had more important things to do. The butler says he just wants some praise, so he'll invite him to tea when this is all over. Gentlemen, everyone knew that Carson wanted more pills, but they decided to stay in this castle and help them because they did not have time to save people. Saya turns to the magicians and asks them to lend her their magic. Thanks to Carson, they soon made the first batch of pills and saved the patients in the library. Most of the patients were cured and went home, but there weren't many pills left. There were still many sick people in the empire who needed medicine, and so they had to find a way to make even more pills. The main character understood that the patients in the library had recovered, but there were a lot of infected people outside, and she had to stay and start creating pills. But she still had some pills left, and she decided that she should take them to Daddy. Carson ordered, and so everyone began to collect as many ingredients as they could. When they were ready to start making the second batch of pills, many people gathered under the magic tower who also wanted to get the pills. Butler says that the recovered patients spread the word that they had a special cure, and now people are crowding around the tower. Blair offers to listen to him since they did create a cure, but they spent it all, and therefore they need more time to create more, and asks these people to be more patient. However, people claim that he is deceiving them because he believes that they want to save the medicines so that they can later sell them at a huge price. The guy tells people to calm down since this is all they have, and then explains that they will give it to the people who need it the most. Saya asks the others to go home and wait patiently for the next batch. Suddenly, the main character saw the second princess, who said that ordinary residents did not deserve this medicine. Michelle approaches the girl and takes the bottle of pills from her, and then she claims that the members of the imperial family should get the medicine first, and she wonders why they should care about these commoners. A man from the crowd heard this and said that he knew that the members of the imperial family had more medicine, and then screams that they have medicine, but they refuse to give them some because they think they don't care about it. And then he offers to capture members of the imperial family and exchange them for medicine. At this time, the butler uses magic to hold back people and invites the princess to run to the library and not stand near him. Michelle says they're fucking trash and then calls the guards to deal with them. The man tells them to come in and get the medicine and then tells them to catch those damn members of the imperial family. Callan turns to Saya and asks her to move away, as he confidently claims that he will protect her. Carson appeared near the main door, and he addresses the people and says that they should all leave, otherwise they cannot expect mercy from him. Seeing him, the main character thought that the main magician had come to save them. Michelle says the damn commoners don't deserve this. But Carson takes the bottle of pills from her and says that this is not for her as a second princess. She asks in surprise how he dares, since it's just a move. The chief magician explains that according to Article 35 of the royal legislation of their empire, as for any member of the royal family who infringes on the interests of the empire and the people, and also jeopardizes their safety, the royal magicians have the right to enforce the law on the spot. Carson claims that her attempt to steal special medicines is a constitutional crime and goes against the interests of the people, and therefore her actions also create panic and endanger the safety of the population, and then asks if she admits her crime. The magician says that now that she has committed a crime, he, as the supreme magician, must obey the law and exclude her from the royal family. Hearing this, the second princess asks him not to do this. Seeing this, the main character thought that Carson usually looks so helpful and reliable, but he sincerely defends the empire, and he even offended the second princess. And he also looked very serious when he said that protecting and guarding the empire was the mission of the magicians. The man asks them not to pretend, and then it is reported that the royal family is constantly crushing the people and they will not give them medicine, and therefore he offers to get the medicine ourselves. The head magician asks if they knew that the medicine was created by the hard work of Princess Sai, standing next to him, and then reveals that she did it just to save them. Hearing this, the princess thought that Carson was interceding for her, and then he takes the people who screamed the most and lifts them into the air. Carson says that the two of them performed more than others, and then he invites people to look at them carefully, since they are suppliers of medicines in pharmacies in the western part of the city, and they are not sick, but here to get medicine, and then asks why. The magician reports that it seems to him that they are not really the ones who want to hoard the medicine and then sell it at a high price. The princess came out to the people and told them to listen to her, and then she says that she noticed that some of them are not sick, but the epidemic is raging, and so she knows how much they want to stay safe, but she understands that many sick people are gathered here with them, and this increases the chances of getting infected. The main character reports that the epidemic is still not under control, and many people are still sick. After all, the number of patients may increase if they continue to crowd into this place. And then he says that in this case, they will completely lose any control over the situation. The young lady reports that their best option is to wait patiently for the medicine at home, and she promises that they will make enough medicine within 3 days. Blair tells the princess that they can't do it in that amount of time. She replies that then she will not sleep, and she will do enough during this time anyway, and her brother claims that he will help her. The princess says that she gives her word as a member of the royal family that she will make a special medicine for everyone, free for 3 days, and the royal magician will send the medicine to their home personally. Saya explains that they will give the medicine to the townsfolk first, and until the epidemic is brought under control, not a single member of the royal family will receive a single pill. Carson says that children in their days are as willful as she is, and he promises on behalf of the royal magicians that he will keep his word along with Princess Saya. A man from the crowd says that he will believe them this time because they can come back for them if they break their word in 3 days. Because you understand that free medicine is good, and this little princess is right, because home is the safest place. After the people have left, the main character thanks Carson and wonders why he helped her. He replies that he did not help her, but did it for the sake of the empire. And then she says that for the record, he should receive part of the gratitude, and she is obliged to praise him in front of his majesty. The princess says that she will praise him well, and at that time, he thought that it was a pity that that cute nurse didn't see how good he was. After the booth died down, Carson asked people to deliver the second princess to the imperial palace. And naturally, the second princess was not going to give up so easily. Michelle came to the emperor and said that he must punish Saya and Carson. And then he explains that they created a special medicine but gave it to the common people. And Saya also swore that no one from the royal family would receive the medicine, and then claims he doesn't know what she's up to. Second princess says that she knew how bad his condition was, but she still swore, and Saya doesn't care about her father at all. The emperor asks if that is why she wants him to punish them. And then he reports that she escaped from the palace and caused chaos in the imperial city. and thinks that even a 5-year-old girl is more sensible than she is, and then claims that she has disgraced the royal family. His Majesty orders the second princess to be taken to her chambers and to keep a close watch on her, and then he says that she will be arrested for 6 months, starting from this moment. Hearing this, the daughter asks her father to forgive her. At this time, the emperor thought that Seiya had created a special medicine, and she was only 5 years old, and she doesn't even have magic, and in the end, he doesn't understand how she did it. His Majesty reflects that his daughter is taking good care of the empire, creating special medicines, and calming the people in the center of the imperial city. And that's why he thinks she's amazing. Over the next 3 days, the magicians and the main character created a special medicine, and finally, they created enough. Carson and Blair asked the royal magicians to send pills to people in their city, and in the end, they brought the epidemic under control. After the people were cured, they shouted with delight that their emperor lived a long time, and they also wanted a long life for the empire, and they lavished praise on the royal family. Suddenly, the main character faints, and the butler says that he will take her back so that she can rest. However, the girl objects and says that she has an important thing to do. Say reports that they have solved the epidemic among the townspeople, but her dad and the rest of the royal family are still sick, and so she must send the pills to the castle right now. At this time, the main character thought that, for no reason, she really missed her father. Despite the fact that only a few days have passed since they saw each other, Riel tells Her Majesty that they will go back now. At this time, the servant reports that they have bad news, and His Highness's illness has become more complicated. The butler calls for the carriage to be prepared immediately, and at this time, the girl thought that her daddy should wait for her since she was returning to save him. When they arrived at the royal palace, the knight stopped them. He explains that His Majesty is gravely ill, and he has ordered that no one except the imperial doctors can visit him. Hearing this, Prince Kalen orders him to get out of the way as he is going to save his father. The princess says that they are here to give him medicine, and therefore suggests that the knight let them in. The girl says that they want to cure their father. At this time, the knight thought that if they delayed His Majesty's treatment without missing them, then later they would be doomed. He says that His Highness can come in, but others should stay outside. When the prince and princess went inside to Dad's room, they saw that he was lying in bed and not moving at all, and then they gave him a pill. After some time, the main character does not understand why there is no effect. After her father took the pill, she noticed that there was no purple smoke, and the red spots were not going away. Saya sat down next to her father and thought that she was late, and then she starts crying and asks her father to wake up, and promises that from now on she will behave well. The princess turns to her father and reminds her that he promised her that nothing would happen to him, but that everything would be fine, and therefore she believes that he cannot give up. Suddenly, the first imperial concubine enters the room. He says that she heard the servants say that she had returned to the palace, and therefore knew that she would come here. The woman says that his father is sick, and therefore offers to go to her so that he does not get infected. Callan objects and says that he will stay with Dad to save him, and then claims that Seiya will find a way. Hersha screams and says that this girl found a cure, but she only cared about civilians, not her father. And then she says that, if it weren't for her oath, His Majesty would have been fine. The little prince explains that if Saya had not developed a cure, they would all have died, including civilians, and their father too. And so he believes that she saved the lives of many people and can save her father. The first concubine turns to the boy and says that Saya is an ominous girl, and so she asks him not to let her deceive him, because the people she saved are all civilians who don't deserve to be saved. Hersha says that when these stupid villagers found out about the medicine, they just wanted to take it away like flies grabbing leftovers, and therefore considers them all selfish. And she is also sure that Saya put his father in danger because of those civilians who are unworthy of help. The woman turns to the little prince and sympathizes with him, since he may lose his father in his youth. And then he says that everything will be fine, like the queen's mother. She will be with him and take care of him and help him. Suddenly, Saya runs up to her and hits the lady on the arm. The girl says that everything she said was nonsense, and she never forgot about her father's illness and would not allow anything to happen to him. Saya claims that she saved the civilians, and now she will save her father. Little princess that she only heard from her shelter that some civilians wanted to steal medicine, but she does not know that most civilians helped them fight the epidemic. The girl explains that she saw a lot of amazing people when she made the medicine in the library, and there are so many people on the front line who have families, but without hesitation, they went to the front line to help patients. The main character reports that some civilians are not very rich, but they gave everything they had to others. And the strength of a person may be small, but the small strength of each person can form the ocean. Many magicians fell ill when there was not enough magic to make enough medicine, and these civilians helped them. They spontaneously organized a large group of volunteers, and thanks to them, they were able to take away enough magic to make a cure. The princess claims that they kept the epidemic under control because of these delightful civilians, and so she believes that such selfless citizens deserve protection, just like her father, who spent quarantine inside the imperial palace. The main character says that she doesn't think civilians should be abandoned, and in her opinion, such an evil person who doesn't care about life, like Hersha, doesn't really deserve to be saved. The first concubine grabbed her face with her hand and said that she does not understand how such an ill-mannered girl dares, how she can lecture, scold, and even beat her. Hersha tells the guards to catch this sinister girl, and when Kalen saw this, he screamed and said that they should let her go. The first concubine screams to stop Prince Kalen. The woman says that Saya, the sinister girl, is responsible for the death of His Majesty, and she has no forgiveness, and therefore she will be sacrificed when her Kalen inherits the throne. The princes turn to the guards and order them to release the girl. Hersha says he is too young to understand this, and then he says that she will plan everything for him when she becomes Queen Mother, and so all he has to do is listen to her. Hearing this, Saya turns to the Queen's mother and says that in her dreams, a person like her does not deserve to be Kalen's mother. Hersha grabs the girl and says that she is here giving orders, and therefore she will be the Queen Mother and will kill the one who dares to stop her. The little princess asks if she dares to kill her. Suddenly, His Highness appears in the room, and with the help of magic, he pushes the woman and the servants. The children run up to him and happily say that he has finally woken up. Sei says that she noticed that his symptoms have just started to subside, and because she believes his illness was getting worse, so the medications didn't work right away, but she knew he would be fine. The emperor tells the girl not to worry, since he is already much better, and then he pats her on the head. At this time, the first concubine thought that this girl really saved the king, and that means he heard everything she said. Hersha addresses His Majesty and says that it was the sinister girl who gave the medicine to the civilians and ignored their safety. And so she was very worried about him, and it was just a slip. The emperor asks if she is thinking of becoming the queen's mother before he dies, and so he believes that now she is trying to put the blame on his child. The knight addresses His Majesty and says that there are many civilians outside the castle, and they all want to see Princess Sayu. The emperor orders the first concubine to be taken to the truth of the castle, and then asks if Hersha thinks that Saya is guilty, and says that he will show everyone who is guilty. When they came out, the people began to shout with delight that they had come to thank Princess Saya for saving her. The princess says they shouldn't do it because she didn't do it herself, and they helped her with this, and she is very happy to see that everything is in order. Saya asks them to leave now, since she understands that they simply managed to keep the epidemic under control, and therefore she considers it better not to gather crowds. The emperor says that Saya saved people's lives, and then asks if the first concubine wanted to punish her, and therefore asks her to tell him who is to blame. Hersha turns to His Majesty and says that she began to panic because he was seriously ill, and she did it for the good of the empire. The king claims that she doesn't even think that he doesn't know what she's up to. His Majesty reveals that she was waiting for him to die of illness so that Kalen could inherit the throne. After all, she believed that, in this case, she would become the queen's mother. The power behind the throne will become the most powerful woman in the empire. The woman objects and says that is not so. The emperor screams and says that she never loved Kalen from his heart, and she considered it just a political tool for herself. The king says that she does not deserve to be Kalen's mother, much less the title of first concubine, and therefore, from now on, she will be deprived of guardianship over Kalen, and she will spend the rest of her life in an imperial prison. Hersha heard this screaming, saying that she admits her mistake, and therefore asks His Majesty to spare her, and then she turns to Kalen and asks him to help her. The prince says that their father is right, and all her love is fake, and he is just a tool for her. Saya walks up to her brother and then says that everything is fine, and they are still here with him. The emperor approaches his children and then hugs them. Ego Majesty says that they are just children, but they were already braver than many other members of the royal family when faced with the epidemic. The father turns to Saya and says that she did not escape, but developed a cure for the epidemic, and therefore believes that she saved the entire empire, and him too. He thanks her and says she is brilliant. The princess explains that she did all this thanks to the power of magic, and so she wants to know more in order to protect him. Kalina of all empires with the help of magic. At this time, the main character thought that she had previously wanted to learn magic in order to be strong enough to escape from the imperial palace. The girl reflects that while she got along with him, she discovered that her father was not indifferent to her, and he was the one she couldn't give up after these days. The princess thought that in addition, she had Riel Kalin and Blair, because you think that they stayed and protected her, and because of them, she decided to give up the idea of escaping from this place. The main character realized something after the epidemic, and so she decided that she would be stronger not to escape, but to protect the people she cared about. Saya reflects on the fact that she wants to protect her father, Colleen Riel Blair, and the people who need her help. And then she asks the emperor to let her learn magic. The girl realizes that with the help of the cultivation methods in the encyclopedia, she will become stronger and will protect everyone. In the end, her father did not agree to her request to learn magic. However, the girl understood that there was a small chance that he would agree, but she still wanted to know his true intentions. A month has passed, and the epidemic is completely over. Life returned to normal, but her father never visited her from then on. The princess remembers that she has not seen her father for a long time. She wonders if he's angry because she wants to learn magic. Blair asks, "Her Highness, what's wrong?" because he thinks she looks upset, and he wonders what's bothering her. The girl replies that it's okay and everything is fine, and then she explains that she was just thinking. Saya wonders why her night guard has come to her now. He asks in surprise if the princess has forgotten about this, and then he says that today is the annual Valentine's Festival. Valentine's Festival is a special festival in the Aries Empire. On this day, boys give girls chocolate to express your loyalty. But the tradition is not limited to lovers. Families and friends can also send their best wishes to the girls. Blair addresses Her Highness and congratulates her on Valentine's Day. And then he says that he brought this chocolate for her. The princess, when she saw the chocolate in the shape of a bear, said that it was very cute. The guy explains that he can make them better with magic, but believes that only a handmade gift can show his sincerity. Saya heard this in surprise and asked if he made them himself. Blair explains that he tried it many times, but these turned out the best, and then asks for forgiveness for not being able to give her better chocolate. The princess thanked the guy and said that the chocolate was really wonderful, and that's why she appreciated his sincerity. Blair happily says he's glad she liked it. At this time, the main character remembered that only Riel had previously given her chocolate at the Valentine's Festival, and therefore she did not expect to receive chocolate from Blair that same year. The princess believes that she should treasure him, and she's worried about magic because she completely forgot that today is Valentine's Day. The minister addresses His Highness and asks if Princess Say's request still bothers him. The servant says that if he allows her to learn magic, then there is a high chance that it will affect the soul sacrifice, and that's why he doesn't think she can learn magic. At this time, the night guard informs the princess that he still has work to do, and therefore must go. Riel tells the princess that it is lunchtime, and he has prepared something special for her. The butler reveals that he has prepared bitter gourd with celery juice, and then reminds her that he promised to prepare it for her, and so he hopes that she will eat everything. At this time, the princess remembered his words, and asks if it was not a joke, and she wonders if he is the devil. Saya says today is Valentine's Day, and asks him not to do this on such a beautiful day. The butler asks what this has to do with the nutritional supplement, and then he invites Her Majesty to try it, and thinks it's very tasty. The main character decided to eat this dish because she had to get it over with. When the girl eats one spoon, she says that bitter gourd is very tasty and tastes like chocolate. And then she enthusiastically asks Riel how he did it, because she thinks this dish is amazing. The butler explains that it's just a little trick, but he hopes she will like this chocolate dish, and then wishes her a good Valentine. The princess asks in surprise if this is his Valentine's chocolate for her, and then thanks. At this time, the main character thought that chocolate was so delicious, and she was very happy, and that's why she would like to have endless chocolate. Saya did not know then that this endless chocolate was secretly approaching her. Carson and Kaylin secretly prepare a gift for Say, and the Archmage believes that revenge is a dish best served cold. Carson thinks that this time he will make Saya try chocolate with green cucumber and bacon. At this time, Kaylin approaches him and asks what he is doing, and then he wonders how he can put something like that in chocolate for Sai. And it starts to be, the magician explains that he should not have done this, and therefore asks His Highness to stop. At this time, Carson thought that the days when he was enslaved by this devil concubine had just ended, and so he didn't think that he would fall into the hands of this little devil, and he doesn't understand why he's so unlucky. The first imperial concubine was imprisoned, and therefore Carson became the guardian knight of Kaline. The prince turns to the magician and says that it is already late, and therefore offers to finish the chocolate. And then he says that he is a great magician in the heir's empire, and therefore he is counting on him. Carson says that he will do everything without any problems and assures that he will not lead His Highness. And then he took up the job given by the prince. Kaline takes his sister's hand and then says that he has a gift for her. The prince invites Saya to look at this chocolate for her and then wishes her a happy Valentine. The princess asks in surprise if this is chocolate with their portraits on it. Kaylin explains that this must be the most special chocolate, and he worked hard on the design of Valentine's gift. Seeing this, the main character thought that he was too big, and this scared her a little. Brother asks if she likes this gift, and he wonders what he did wrong, because he thinks it's impossible. Saya takes his hand and says that she really likes his gift. And at this time, I thought that chocolate was a little exaggerated, but I understand that Kaylin put his heart into it, and that's why she thinks she can't refuse. However, the main character does not understand how she can eat such a large chocolate. Suddenly, the twin brother noticed that his gift was beginning to sink. The princess reports that because of the sun, the chocolate will completely melt if left in this place. And then he says that in this case, the entire imperial palace will be covered in chocolate. At this time, the chief magician thought that the prince had asked him to change so many times, and he understands that he can no longer be changed and he cannot take the blame. Kaylin asks in surprise what they should do, since he understands that his father will spank him if this happens. And at that time, I thought that Carson did all this, and therefore he does not know magic and will not be to blame. Say says that in this case, they have no other choice and offers to eat it together. Hearing this, the prince and the magician thought that they would not be able to eat it all. The princess says that since the magician did it, he must help them with it. The young lady picks up a fork and says to stop the chocolate from spilling. They have to do this. On that day, a giant chocolate attacked the imperial palace of the Aries Empire. To fight the disaster, people joined the fight by eating chocolate, and finally, they defeated a strong enemy with laughter. Since then, giant chocolate has become a new Valentine's tradition. Princess Saya enters her room and tells Riel that she has already returned. Suddenly, the main character saw that her dad was waiting for her. The butler asks if Her Highness has returned, and then reveals that His Majesty just arrived here, and he said he wanted to talk to her. The main character asks her father in surprise, "What's the matter?" And at that time, she thought that he had come to her to punish her for this huge chocolate. The emperor hands the girl a box and congratulates her on the holiday Valentina. The daughter asks in surprise if this is his chocolate for her. At this time, the butler remembers that this man did not give chocolate to anyone. When Saya opened the box, she saw that there was something else in it besides chocolate. And when I read it, I realized that this was a notice of admission to the Royal School of Magic. The princess asks in surprise if Dad agrees for her to study magic. The main character asks why it says that she cannot go there until she is 9 years old. The emperor explains that no one can be accepted into the school before the age of 9. And besides, before she leaves, he hopes that she can stay with him to help him take care of Kalina. At this time, the main character thought that her father was trying to say that he did not want to part with her, and then she thanks him for the chocolate. The girl explains that today she ate too much chocolate, and therefore offers to eat it together. At this time, the princess thought that this was the best gift she had ever received. 4 years later, the main character stood near the gates of the Royal School of Magic, and thought that she was finally going there. And then she remembers that in her previous life, she was an excellent cultivator. The main character reflects on the fact that her dear master later betrayed her. He finished her off and stole her cultivation base in order to gain immortality. However, the story of the main character did not end as she was reborn. In this strange Western wizarding world, she has a father named Ozer, and he is big and scary as the devil and overprotective father. And also, the main character has a younger brother, Kalen, who will survive only if he sacrifices her life. He's a little demon with a big brother complex. The girl also met a talented magician named Blair Fate, made him her guardian knight. And of course, she cannot forget the managers named Riel, who is always with her and is ready to do anything for her. With their help, the main character grew little by little. At first, she wanted to survive by playing the sweet girl. And also, the main character wanted to learn magic in order to avoid her fate and not die as a result of her sacrifice. However, when the princess found a way to study magic, she changed her mind. And so she decided not to run away, because she wants to use magic to protect the people she doesn't want to leave. And so the main character uses magic to change her destiny. The girl realizes that today is her first day at the Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Suddenly, her father turns to her and asks why she is still standing there, and asks her to go to him. My daughter says that the Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is very huge, and that's why she even got lost in it. At this time, the main character thought that perhaps her father was worried, and that is why he came all this way to personally send her to school. The emperor tells his princess to stand still, and then explain that a member of the royal family should not behave like that in a public place. The king invites the girl to come with him, as he will guide her. Hearing this, Saya is surprised, and asks if he will go to school with her. Riel meets them near the gate and offers to wait. He addresses His Majesty and says that he is their king, and after all, given his high-ranking status, he will immediately cause a ruckus as soon as he steps inside. And then the butler takes the little lady by the hand and says that it is his duty to take the princess to school, and asks if he is right. However, the emperor objects and claims that he himself is carrying it out. Riel says that His Highness is too busy with the affairs of the empire and therefore asks that he be allowed to do this. The king explains that he's already got it all figured out and doesn't need to worry about it. At this time, the main character does not understand what is happening, and she does not understand why they are quarreling over such a trifle. But suddenly, she heard a voice saying that the entrance ceremony was about to begin, and they were asking all their students to go to the playground right now. The princess addresses Papa and Riel, and then says that the entrance ceremony will begin soon, and she will be late if she does not go now. And then she leaves, and those who argued are left behind the gate. The main character reflects that she has never been to the Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry before, and therefore very quickly found the playground where the entrance ceremony was being held following the crowd. Like all other inaugural ceremonies, it began with a long welcoming speech by the director. The director reports that they devote themselves to raising the descendants of members of the royal family and strive to contribute their talent to the magic of all countries. And therefore, whatever their magical talent here, they will receive the best education. The director says that he hopes that each of them will devote himself to the study of magic and become a great magician in his country. And then he offers to warmly greet Andri, a graduating student who is considered the best student, and he will give a welcoming speech. However, the students waited for a long time, but he still did not come, and a rumor spread between them that this student, a terrible graduate who constantly fights and skipping a speech, is a trifle for him. Hearing this, the main character thought that the student who takes first place must be an excellent student. But if rumors are to be believed, he looks more like an unlucky student, and she wondered what he was like. The princess wondered when he could go, if he was not at the entrance ceremony. At this time, student Andri says that there is so much noise from this boring entrance ceremony, and then he saw that among the new students, there was someone capable, and he became interested. The director felt uncomfortable and asked what he should do now. A girl with long blonde hair says that she can give a speech in Andri's place. The man says that it's great that Celia is here and invites her to go on stage as soon as possible. When the lady came on stage, she greeted the students, and then she reveals that she is Celia, a high school student, and she will give a welcoming speech. The girl says that first welcome to the Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. From this moment, their new life begins, And whoever they are, she sincerely hopes that they can become whoever they want to be. Celia Screaming says that even though she does not bear the title of better student, and another should stand here instead of her, but next year she will take first place and will stand here by right. Hearing this, the students say among themselves that this lady is amazing, and they heard that she is the princess of the great empire, who comes from a noble family, is a good student, and is also beautiful, and she is like a goddess. At this time, Saya thought that, as expected, the Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry has many talented students, but she understands that she must not lose to them, and that's why she can't wait for her to learn magic and hopes that interesting adventures will await her. When the main character entered the library, she was surprised because she saw a lot of books on magic, and she believes that this is a real paradise for a magician. The girl remembers that she promised her father that she would begin to study magic only at the age of 9, and therefore she did not have the opportunity to study anything, in addition to what was written in the Encyclopedia of Cultivation on Foreign Soil. Because of this, she read the book from cover to cover. The main character reflects on the fact that the cultivation methods described in the book are different from the cultivation methods in her previous world, because they are based on magic, and she could learn little from this book because she knew nothing about magic. Saya says that she won't be able to cultivate in this world once she learns magic, and just the thought of it gives her goosebumps. The girl thinks that she needs to take these books to her room, since they should be enough for a week of classes. The main character saw that other students came up to Celia and said with admiration that she was very amazing. One of them says that she has admired her since she met her in the Great Empire, and they are from the same state and therefore can communicate after graduation. After these words, Celia invites the girl not to touch her and never says such things again. And then she took a step back. Sally saw the girl and then apologized and explains that she didn't know there was someone behind her, and that's why she stepped back. Saya collects the books and says it's okay. And then a girl with silver hair comes up to her and screaming asks what she is saying and how dare she push their Princess Celia. The girl who was wearing the red dress was named Bella, and she is a noble lady from the Great Empire. She asks why Celia was staring at her like that, and then tells her to get on her knees and apologize to Princess Sally, and then put her foot on the book. At this time, the main character picked up the book and Bella fell. The girl apologizes because she just wanted to pick up her book. Bella's friend is approached and asked if she is okay. However, the girl screaming asks how she can fool her with copper and invites her friends to catch her now, since she wants to teach her a lesson. Saya asks in surprise if she wants to teach her a lesson, and then offers to try. The main character claims that she started it and asks if she thinks she will be scared. Bella screaming says that she overestimates herself and offers to see what she is worth. Blair approaches them and says that fighting is prohibited at the Royal Academy of Witchcraft and Wizardry, let alone using magic for these purposes, and then asks what they have done here. When Saya saw him, she wondered why he was here. At this time, Bella approaches him and says that he is wearing a teacher's uniform, which means he is one of their teachers, and asks if this is true. And then he says he's just in time. The girl in the red dress says that this girl is pointing. She didn't look at her where she was going and deliberately bumped into them. And not only did she not apologize, but she deliberately made it so that she would fall. Bella reveals that her father is the Duke of the Great Empire, and she does not understand how this girl dares to humiliate her, and then asks Sir what he thinks she should be punished for. Say says that as the daughter of a duke, she mixed black and white perfectly, and then explains that she hit her while she was walking calmly, and it wasn't her fault, but she stepped on her book and tried to get her to apologize, and then asks if she thinks she is so unattainable and powerful. Bella turns to the guy and asks if he sees how she continues to argue with her, that he should punish her and expel her from the academy. Blair screams and tells the lady that's enough. And then he says that he believes that Princess Saya is not at all the person she says she is. The guy says that, besides, he just watched them conspire against her, and then he says that, seriously, only they deserve punishment here. Saya says that Mr. Blair is right, and then asks what he thinks her punishment will be, according to the rules of the academy. Hearing this, the silver-haired girl says that they know each other, and it's all nonsense since he is just pretending to be a teacher to help her. And then she says that she has never seen such a young teacher, and therefore wants to report him to the director. At this time, Celia tells the lady to shut up. And then he says that they say the academy hired one teacher who is barely 13 and therefore believes that it must be. He asks if this is true. Hearing this, Bella thought that she had heard the princess talk about him, and she wondered if it was really he, Blair, that magic teacher, who was recommended by the court magic of the Empire themselves. Celia turns to the teacher and says that this girl has done nothing wrong, and therefore she thinks that everyone will be better off if they each go their own way. And then he turns to Belly and tells her to apologize. The silver-haired lady heard this and thought that Princess Selly was angry and would need her support in the academy in the future. And then she bows her head and says she apologizes. And at that time, she thought that they had humiliated her, and next time she would not allow this to happen. At this time, Andre was watching them and thought that he was a little disappointed because he thought that he could enjoy a good show. The best student became interested in how this girl was able to absorb magic. Saya thanked Blair for helping her with the books, and she wondered why he became a teacher at the Royal Academy of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and she asked him about it. The guy explains that this is because he can learn more about magic here, but more importantly, that it is here. Hearing this, the girl asks in surprise if it is true because of her. He smiles and says that he is her guardian knight. And then he says that, no matter where she is, he will always be with her to protect her. When they reach the hostel, the girl suggests that the guy go back, because it will start raining soon. He suggests that Her Highness be careful. Then the princess was climbing the stairs. Then she heard a roar and thought that something was wrong with these buildings. When Saya came to the door of her room, she again heard a noise, and when she looked out the window, she saw a black monster. She got scared and screamed loudly. But a few minutes later, she saw Kaylin, who asked how she was surprised, and wondered if she was shocked. The girl asks Kaylin in surprise what he is doing here. And at that time, she thought that he should now be in the Imperial City, and she did not understand why he came to her academy. The prince explains that he just wanted to know how she was doing, and so he asked Carson to secretly bring her here. At this time, the main character thought that she was touched, that Kalain decided to visit her, but she understands that it's probably not easy for poor Carson now. The brother takes the girl by the hand and then states that she looks sad and asks what happened, and he wonders if someone is hurting her. The lady replies that of course no one offends her and does not understand who would dare to do this. Saya, when she entered the room, she saw many photographs of her brother as well as balloons and asks why he made such a mess in her room. The brother explains that it was because he was afraid that she would miss him. And then she says that she left their home to study here, and perhaps in the future they will not be able to see each other often. Kaylin says that's why when she misses him, she can just come into this room, and he asks if that's genius, and then reveals that this is a special gift for her on her first day of school. The guy explains that he called this room the exclusive Kaylin room in a single copy, and then he reports that it took him the whole day to decorate it. Brother doesn't understand why Saya is packing her things and asks about it. He also wonders if she wants to move out because she didn't like the room. The princess objects and says that she likes the exclusive Kalina room in a single copy. And then they are informed that, according to the rules of the academy, they cannot decorate their rooms without special permission. The girl says that judging by the appearance of her room, she is sure that she will be thrown out of here, and so she believes that this could happen tomorrow. Hearing this, Kaylin realizes that this is all bad, and then explains that he just wanted to give her a special gift in honor of her first day at the academy. The prince understands that Saya really wants to study magic, and if she is excluded because of him, she will not be able to do it. And then he tells his sister not to worry, because he will return her room to its previous appearance, and no one will throw her out. At this time, the main character thought that although Kaylin did this for her, she does not want to be expelled from the academy, and therefore she must evoke sympathy from him and make him give up and hope that he can understand her situation. The girl understands that he had been preparing this gift for a long time, and no one expected it to end like this. Saya approaches her brother and says that if her room is the same again, then she doesn't understand what she will do when she misses him. The brother puts a bow on his hair and says that he will leave it so that he will have something to remember if he misses her. Suddenly, the girl saw that the fire in the candle filled her with the fact that it was time for classes, and she should go to the educational campus. The main character says that this is the spirit of the candle, and he seems very cute to her. and then she realized that it seemed like the academy was using them to remind them to study. Kaylin tells Saya to hurry to class and not to worry, as he will take care of her room. Hearing this, the girl thanked him and then hurried to her lessons. Suddenly, the main character felt that someone was detaining her, and she saw a guy asking her name. When the girl looked at him, she wondered who this handsome guy with black hair was, and she realized that this was not the right time to go into a trance. Saya asks who he is, and she wonders why he brought her here, and then she screams for him to let her go. Andri asks why she is such a hot-tempered girl, and then tells her not to worry, since he is not going to do anything to her, but just wants to know something. The guy sniffed the girl and said that, as I expected, the strange aroma that he smelled at the entrance ceremony came from her. Hearing this, the main character thought that she smelled strange. The young man asks if she can absorb magic, and he wonders if she can teach him that. The girl doesn't understand how he knows this, and then assumes that he must have seen her. And then she remembers that she actually didn't absorb magic back then, but she used a method similar to curling power to convert magic into spiritual chi. The main character reflects on the fact that in the past few years, she has not been able to learn magic, but she has mastered the same power as the curly one after studying the book. At that moment, she turned Bella's magic that she was trying to use against her into spiritual chi. But they don't know about it, so they think she stroked it, and so she reflects on the fact that she cannot tell him the truth. Andri asks what she was thinking about, and then reminds her that he asked her about absorbing magic. Saya says that absorbing magic is some kind of savagery. Hearing this, he says that since she is not going to tell him, he will find out all this himself. The guy touches the girl and using his magic tries to read her information. At this time, the main character thought that his magic was very strong. He became convinced that she really absorbed magic. The guy didn't even notice how the girl ran away, but he realizes that she used magic, and he has never seen anything like it before. And therefore, he thinks that this girl is very interesting. The main character thought that, fortunately, she had turned that guy's magic into spiritual chi. And so she managed to escape by using the most popular method, the fading mirage from the world of cultivators. However, the princess does not understand who this guy is. And then she reflects that after using the fading mirage, which absorbed her magic, spiritual chi, still remained inside her, and she believes that his magic must be very strong. The girl knows that the magic he used was not offensive, and obviously he didn't want to hurt her, but he wanted to test her. Suddenly, the princess heard the bell for class and realized that she had spent too much time on it and therefore might be late. And then she quickly ran. When the girl entered the class, everyone was already in place, and then she greeted the teacher and said that her name was Saya Aris. The teacher screaming asks if she doesn't know when class starts. And then he asks how dare she be late for his class. And she reports that she has no sense of time. The teacher says that if she were in his great empire, she would have already been kicked out of school. The girl says that she is very sorry because she should not have been late. Teacher Moen, asking if she is Saya Aris. And then crying out, he says that people from the Aryan Empire always behave supraworldly, only because their country is very strong, and especially being a princess, she managed to be late for class on the first day. Moen asks what she thinks she is, and he wonders if she knows what respect is. Hearing this, the main character thought that the teacher did not like their country. The Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was created by 3 different states: the Ares Empire, the Great Empire, and the Kingdom of Kriya. On the surface, all 3 countries are working together, but behind the scenes, there is a lot of infighting. For example, take the relationship between students from different countries. It does not matter what your social status is in your own country, because people from other countries will not take it seriously. The girl understands that there are many rumors circulating among people from different countries, especially regarding the Great Empire and the Ares Empire. She heard that Mr. was from the Great Empire, and that is why he disliked hers. The teacher turns to the girl and tells her that she will stop standing there and offers to go and test her magical abilities. And then she says that she is the only one who hasn't done it yet. Moen reveals that this crystal ball is specially created to evaluate students' magical abilities, and therefore she should put her hand on it and not waste time. Suddenly, the main character overheard a conversation about how someone thinks she doesn't need a test because she must be a bronze-level failure. Sae saw Bella, and she didn't expect them to become classmates. Bella says that she heard that, despite the fact that she is the princess of the Ares Empire, she is a cursed child that everyone avoids. And then he reports that she not only lived in a cold palace, but also could not study magic because of her father's ban. The silver-haired girl claims that she is different, and as the daughter of a duke, has studied magic since childhood and reached the platinum level during the assessment test. And therefore, she believes that she is far from her. Saya says, what if she is a platinum-level mage, and asks why her attack had no effect on her. Bella explains that it was an accident, and then screams and says that she is a damn girl, which was born as a piece of trash with weak abilities. The main character says that it's not up to her to decide, and then puts her hand on the ball. And from this, it turned golden, and then completely cracked, and some piece flew straight into Bally's face. At this time, the audience became noisy as the crystal ball broke, and only the best archmage in history managed to break the crystal ball during the test. And that magician left a magic book in an unknown language, and this means it is as good as that Archimag. Hearing this, the main character thought that, if the archmage who wrote this book managed to break the ball, does this mean that they both store spiritual chi inside? At this time, Bella rose from the floor. And then screaming, she says that this is unimaginable, and she wonders if the explosion of the crystal ball means that she has stronger magical abilities. The girl with silver hair turns to the teacher and says that she must have done something to destroy the crystal ball because she knew she would fail the test. At this time, Moen thought that because of her, he lost his hair, and she would pay him for it. The teacher turns to the girl and says that Bella is right, because she believes that she probably destroyed the ball because she was afraid to admit her poor abilities, and then reports that she is rated as a bronze-level student, and so he invites her to return to her place. Bella happily says it sucks, and then she says that there are only a few courses here, and for bronze-level mages. As a platinum-level mage, she can study whatever she wants. The girl with silver hair says she doesn't understand why she's telling her this. And then he says that in the end, bronze-level mages will be expelled after a month, and if they are not reapproved by the teachers. When the main character heard this, she thought that this teacher was clearly in cahoots with Bella because they were both picking on her, and he definitely wouldn't give her a chance to take the test again. Moen asks why she's still standing there, and then reminds her that he told her to sit down since they need to continue discussing the Freshers' Day. The teacher says Freshman's Day is a very important event, and therefore they should listen to it carefully. Moen says Freshman's Day is one of their school's most important traditions. At first glance, you might think that this is an unusual holiday, but in fact, it is a competition to test their full strength. New students will draw lots and perform in pairs with older students. There are no restrictions regarding performances, but it must take place in pairs. The team that takes first place will not only achieve a good reputation, but will also become a source of pride in their classes. The teacher says that therefore they must be fully armed, and they must win and bring the class the first prize. And at this time, he thought that no one had ever received it in his class, and this was bad for his reputation, and this time they should get the first prize in their favorite ways. At this time, the main character thought that the teacher was very worried about this competition, and therefore she had an idea. Saya asks Mr. Moen, if she can win, will he give her another chance to take the assessment? And then she says that she doesn't want to be expelled from school because of her poor abilities. At this time, he thought that she was causing a lot of problems, and since she was walking somewhere, everyone had already drawn lots and chosen a mate. The teacher says that he can accept her offer, but there is only one person left, and then invites her to try if he thinks he can win. Suddenly, the girl heard the students talking, and she doesn't understand who they are talking about and why they have such faces. When Saya opened the paper, she saw Andrew's inscription and thought that this is the high school student who ranks first among everyone, but has a bad reputation. At this time, Andrew walked near the class and saw a girl and thought that he had met her again. The students notice the guy and say that he got into a fight with someone again, and they don't understand what he's doing here, and they wonder who in their class insulted him. At this time, Bella thought that Sia was lucky with her partner, and she couldn't wait to see this amazing show. And then she smiled. The girl realized that this guy is Andrew, about whom everyone is talking, and she realizes that the worst thing is that she will have to perform with him, and she wonders why she is so unlucky. The main character reflects on the fact that the freshman's holiday is not the only thing that worries her. The teacher says that the crystal ball is worth a fortune, and since she broke it, she must compensate for the damage. And then he says that this does not concern him and invites her not to even think to involve him in this. After the lesson, Mr. Moen insisted that she reimburse the entire cost of the crystal ball and told her to discuss it with the teacher who is in charge of the textbooks. After the lesson, the girl came to the teacher's office and then apologized and said that she was Saya from the first grade, and she's there to discuss damages for the crystal ball. At this time, the main character thought that the issue of assessing damage and compensation would be resolved only after she told both her father and Riel about it. But she is sure that they will turn this school upside down if they find out about this. And besides, she does not want them to worry about her, and therefore she decides to take care of such trifles herself. The woman asks if she is the same girl who destroyed the crystal ball during the assessment test. The lady says that it was her, and at that time, he thought that everyone already knows about it and bad news spreads quickly. The woman says she won't have to pay the damages, and someone has already done it for her. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and became interested. The lady with blue hair turns to the lady and says that she bought some crystal balls and then asks to see if there are enough of them. The woman says there are so many of them and then asks why she bought so many. The lady explains that she didn't know what type of crystal ball would be a replacement, so she bought them all at once. At this time, the main character thought that this girl had compensated for the broken ball for her. The lady reveals that she is her classmate Angela and the Douglas family, and she did not have the opportunity to meet her before, and therefore she is glad to meet them. Hearing this, Saya thought about what she had heard about this Douglas family, and to her they seem to be the richest merchant family in their empire, and they say that their wealth can be compared to the wealth of the royal family, and this is a truly powerful clan, and she is a member of it. Saya says that she is very grateful, but she broke the crystal ball, and she is the one who should bear responsibility for it, and that's why she's going. But Angela reassures the girl that everything is fine, and she actually did it to show her gratitude. Angela asks Her Highness if she remembers this epidemic that swept through the empire 4 years ago. She says that she also became infected then and was on the verge of death, but survived thanks to her medicine. The blue-haired girl claims that these crystal balls are barely enough to express her gratitude. And then she says that it is an honor for her to help her savior, and therefore asks to accept her gratitude. Hearing this, the main character, I didn't even think that anyone would remember what happened 4 years ago. Sei says that in that case, she will accept her, and from now on they will be friends, and she can just call her Saye. Hearing this, Angela became happy as they were now friends. She says that she knows that Saya wants a chance to evaluate her skills again, thanks to the freshers' party, and then asks if she is sure that she wants to work with Andri. The main character tells me not to worry, because she will take care of it. Angela says that Andri is a really great student, who always comes first in school grades, but she has heard so many bad stories about him. The lady reports that all the students here come from noble families, but Andri is an ordinary person who grew up in the slums, and she heard that he fought constantly as a child, but he also turned out to be very capable of magic, and so he was accepted into this school as an exception. Angela says that he is a commoner, and that is why many students from noble families looked down on him and teased him, but he beat them up every time, and for this reason, he hates to know. In addition, his magic is very powerful, and therefore, all the students try to avoid him in fear that he will get angry and harm them. Lady says that as she just saw in class, he looks fierce like the leader of some gang. He belongs to another world not similar to the one in which they live. Angela says that if her partner is someone like him, then she wonders what will happen if he starts bullying her. At this time, the main character understands that he has a special status, and therefore believes that no matter who he is, she is not afraid of him. The girl wonders if he hates to know if he will refuse to be her partner because of his background. At this time, Riel secretly watched the girl, and when he heard that Princess Saya had destroyed the crystal ball, he realized that something was going wrong, and he is sure that they decided to mock her. Riel believes that the teacher not only rated her as a bronze-level student, but also forced her to take such a dangerous student as a partner, and so she decides to treat him with her black tea. Carson saw the butler and asked what he was doing there. At this time, Saya saw the butler too, and runs away as she should not see him. The main character looked out the window and finds it strange that something obeyed her. Carson asks the butler what he is doing, and then states that servants are not allowed to come here. Riel explains that he is here to protect Princess Sayu, and since this is not an imperial palace, people from other countries will not treat her politely just because she is a princess, and therefore he cannot allow her to be bullied. The head magician asks if he's sure it's not, because he just can't let her go. And then she says that at her age, it's time to learn to deal with problems on her own. And she believes that too much care will only prevent her from growing up. Carson asks Riel if he wants the princess to grow up worthless and dependent only on him. Hearing this, the butler thought that he was right, and he knew that one day she would grow up. And at this time, he does not understand what he is doing now, and also believes that he should start trusting her. Riel asks the magician what he is doing here. Kaisin. It means that he, as an archmage, was invited to this school as an honorary teacher, and of course, he could not help but come. At this time, the main character secluded herself, and she reflects on the fact that she still hasn't figured out what to do with the freshman's holiday. And so she can't sleep, and she doesn't know how to persuade Andri to become her partner, let alone what they will perform about. She muses that since he hates knowing so much, he won't agree to work with her. Suddenly, Saya saw her dad and asks what he is doing here. He explains that he was tired from work and just passed by while he was walking. At this time, the main character does not understand how he managed to get into school, and so it seems to her that he actually came here for her sake. The girl remembers that she heard about this type of high-level teleportation magic that he used, and the person using this magic can only teleport to the place he thinks about. But this magic requires a lot of effort and cannot be used constantly. Saya understands that he came here because of her, because he missed her. The emperor says that it is already late, but she still sits on the roof instead of going to bed, and then asks what is bothering her. The princess says it's not that important, and her dad deals with different people every day. And then he asks that if he met someone with whom it is difficult to agree, but he needs to cooperate with him, what would he do then? The king replies that since this is a matter of cooperation, he would not choose a partner with whom such difficulties might arise from the very beginning. After all, he believes that people of different principles cannot find a common language, and therefore it is better to find another partner than to waste energy trying to come to an agreement. Hearing this, the main character thought that she also thinks, but she has no choice. She suddenly thought that if they had a common goal, they could definitely get along. And the main thing for her is to convince Andri that they are in the same boat. Saya hugs her dad and thanks him, and then tells him that now she knows what she has to do. The next day, the main character thought that the great battle to convince Andri that she was on his side was starting right now. The girl remembers that according to Angela, Andri comes to this place for lunch every day, and no one dares to go there at this time precisely because of him. She believes that she must convince him to become her partner, because she understands that the competition is close. Saya climbed the tree and waited for him to walk, and then when she saw the guy, she told him to stand still and reported that she had finally found him. The guy asks who she is, and at that time, he thought that he was not Andy and he didn't know her. The girl reminds him that he recently squeezed her in an alley, and then she says that she didn't expect him to forget her so quickly. At this time, Andri thought that he was right, and it is not surprising that he smelled her while he was walking here. Saya tells the guy to listen to her carefully, and then she says that she is the princess of the Aries Empire, and in appearance she is a simple princess. But to us, in fact, she spent several years in Jianghu of the underworld, hiding under a different identity. The lady reports that in the rising world of the Aries Empire, she is known as the Queen of Darkness and Barefoot, and she has a lot of minions. But he is the first who dares to be rude to her, and then she invites him to work for him as she will take him under her wing. The girl looked at the guy and thought that he had fallen for it, and it was not for nothing that she dressed up like that. And she understands that Dad was absolutely right, and it's easier to get along with him only if they are on the same side. Andri says he didn't expect her to be so good. Hearing this, the main character thought that, as expected, her plan was a success, and as long as he agrees with her, he will definitely be her partner at the freshers' party. Andri asks to be allowed to call her the Great Queen of Darkness, and then he says that he will give it his all for her sake. When Saya heard this, she thought that he simply believed her, and her plan really worked, but she doesn't understand why she has a bad feeling. At this time, the guy thought that she was the Queen of Darkness, and he found it funny what a stupid title she came up with. Andri says that since she did him such an honor, he proposes to unite and take over this academy, and then asks how about to be everyone they don't like. The lady was surprised when she heard this, because she had never thought of becoming a bully. And then she says that he is too young and subjugating everyone at the academy is outdated a long time ago, and therefore she is already tired of it. Saya reveals that she is interested in winning the upcoming Freshman's Festival, and then asks if he would like to share this victory with her. When the guy heard this, it became clear that she was paired with him, and he doesn't understand how she came up with such a performance for the sake of this boring holiday, and he almost fell for it. At this time, the lady does not understand why he is silent. Andri will point out that this holiday is important to her, and he believes that he can take advantage of this opportunity. Suddenly, the guys heard voices suggesting that Andri get out, and then the guys say that, with him, this crazy girl and the Black Crows always get together. Andri reveals that he lost to him in the last magic competition, and asks why he continues to pester him over such trifles. The guy asks how dare he bother him after getting it many times. The man with green hair tells him to shut up. And then he reveals that he comes from one of the greatest magical families of the Great Empire, and then asks how he can lose to punks like him. And he explains that he was just a little careless. The green hair guy reveals that he brought 2 mages from his clan to practice with him. And then he says that if he can't defeat them, it means he cheated last time, and therefore he believes that this time he is finished. At this time, Andri thought that he had brought great magicians to fight him, and therefore believed that he had no shame or conscience. The main character remembers that she heard that this guy is indeed from one of the greatest magical families in the Great Empire, but his abilities are quite low, and yet the magicians he brought are quite strong, and Andri may have problems. The girl thinks that these magicians are strong alone, and he brought 2 of them. A guy with green hair turns to a girl and asks if something is wrong. And then she claims that she shouldn't have been introduced to such punks as Andri, so she believes that she is drowning herself. The man turns to the girl and says that she looks beautiful. And then he claims that if she behaves and goes with him, he will let her off the hook and asks what she will say to that. At this time, Andri comes up to them and holds his hand, and then offers to talk to him, only with him, and he threatens that if he dares to touch her again, he will die. The guy with green hair screams and says that he is in pain and asks to let him go, and when they released him, he says that Andri is playing with death. Andri asks what he will do to him, and then he says that if he doesn't want to get it, then he should take his people and get out of here. The guy with green hair screams that he is a scoundrel, and then turns to the magicians and asks what they are waiting for, and he wonders if they see what he did to him, and then he screams for them to beat him to death. At this time, the guy turns to Saya and invites her not to worry, but just wait for him in a safe place. Andri says that he was so nervous that he had not practiced for a long time, and he didn't expect anyone to volunteer to be his target. And after that, the battle begins, and he easily defeats one magician. At this time, the main character was watching them, and screaming, said that 2 senior magicians attacked the student, and considers this a great shame. The girl screaming says that standing aside is not her style, and then asks him to let her join him. Saya used her magic to neutralize the other magicians. At this time, her friend thought that she was absorbing magic again. The princess reminds him that she said she would take him under her wing, so she asks him to let her teach them a lesson. At this time, the guy thought that he did not expect her to be so good. The girl turns to Andy and offers to smear them. When the guy heard what she called him, he thought that she couldn't call him that in front of so many people, and he thinks that she should not push her luck since he is only playing along with her. After a few minutes of active fighting, the guy with green hair does not understand how they can be so strong that even senior magicians are no match for them. The elder magicians turn to the young master and tell him to run away since they underestimated them. And another magician says that all his magic has been absorbed and he does not understand what is happening. Saya turns to Andri and tells him that she taught them a lesson and just saved his life. And she wonders how he will thank her. The guy asks what she wants from him. Lady explains that she wants him to team up with her, and together they won the first-year festival. Andri puts his hand on the girl's head and asks if she herself isn't tired of this game. And then she says that this image does not suit her. Hearing this, the main character thought that he had exposed her, and it turns out her plan had failed. The guy tells the lady not to worry, as he will be her partner for the upcoming celebration. And then he says that he wants something in return. Andre wants her to teach him how to absorb magic. Hearing this, the girl thought that she knew that he had always been interested in absorbing magic, and she assumed that was what he would ask for. The princess understands that even though this is actually a cultivation method for them, it is no different from magic. And even if she teaches him this, he will not understand who she was in a past life. And if he helps her get first prize, she will teach him. Saya says no problem, and then says that they have to wait until she wins the first prize at the festival. And she invites him to just think about what they will perform with. And then he says that she has to go, and they will see each other tomorrow at the rehearsal. The next morning, the main character went to the dream rehearsal room. She was told that the scenery would change itself according to the costumes of the performers, but she was not at all interested because she had been thinking about their performance all night and had not decided what they would perform with. The main character thinks that it should be unusual and attractive, and maybe something similar to the stage play about Juliet and Romeo. The girl understands that this is too embarrassing, and there are only two of them, and she does not understand how they can stage the play. And that's why he thinks that he needs to come up with something else that can be performed in pairs. Saya remembers that when she lived in the palace, her dad and Riel taught her to dance, and she became good at it. And that's why she thinks she should choose dance. Suddenly, Andre asks what she was thinking about. The lady replies what she thinks about their performance. He is sure that she has something on her mind and asks about it. Lady invites him to dance. He asks if it took her all night to come up with this, and then agrees. The girl says that he looks confident and therefore suggests that he start practicing. And then they start dancing and the guy keeps stepping on her foot. Saya realized that he doesn't know how to dance and asks about it. The guy explains that she didn't tell him how to move and then says that he doesn't know how and asks if there are any problems. The girl asks in surprise why he agreed to this. He explains that there is nothing in his world that he cannot do. And so, as long as he wants to learn, she only needs to teach him, and he is sure that they will get the first prize. Andre says that, after all, she hasn't taught him how to absorb magic yet. At this time, the main character thought that he was confident in himself, and then invited him to follow her instructions. She tells him to put his right hand on her waist, and with his left hand, to take her and lift her up. The girl says that he closely followed their dance steps, and first he took a step with his left foot, and then with his right. And he tensed his body, first stood on the tip with his left foot, and then with his right. At this time, the guy thought that she looked cute when she was so serious. The lady explains that he now needs to put his right foot back and step. Suddenly, she stands on his foot and apologizes. And then she explains that she told him to step back and asks why he didn't do it. The guy apologizes and explains that he didn't hear her. The lady asks if he is flying in the clouds. And at that time, I thought that he did not listen at all to what she was telling him. Suddenly, a guy comes up to them and says that he's also curious because he has a good dance partner, and he doesn't understand why Andre doesn't just focus on learning from her. And then reveals that he made him worry about SAI. The guy with black hair asks who he is and wonders what this has to do with him. The stranger claims that he had nothing to do with this, and he simply feels sorry for Sayu since she is honest and hardworking. The main character looked at the guy and remembered that he was her classmate, but she did not remember his name. The guy with pink hair says that his name is Gels, and he is Sai's classmate. I came here to rehearse, so I happened to see them dancing. Gels takes the girl and says that acting is not a game, and it's about concentration. At this time, the main character thought that this was amazing because his dance steps were very precise, and she subconsciously followed his steps. During lessons, Gels always looked like, but he becomes a completely different person when he dances. At this time, Andre was watching them, and he says that she is his partner and takes the girl. The guy with pink hair says that if he wants to be paired with her, then he should improve his dancing skills, and then asks, how about Togo shows him some moves? But he understands that it will be a little difficult for him to master them since he knows nothing about dancing. Andre grabs him by the shirt and offers to just show him how difficult it is. At this time, the main character does not understand what is happening and why they are training together. and she wonders if they have forgotten about her. She doesn't understand what to do and wonders why this is happening. Saya looked at the guys and thought that they were acting so strangely, and she didn't want to look at it. Gels reports that it's not bad, and he didn't expect him to master it so quickly. Andre stands on the guy's leg and says that he is not mistaken, since he has not yet gotten used to it. At this time, Gels thought that he was clearly lying, and he was trying to take revenge on him. At this time, the main character thought that he really deserved to be the best student, because he learned to dance well in such a short time, and she doesn't understand why he couldn't dance after her training. Gels reports that he is doing well, and therefore he returns Saya to her partner, and then he says that the rest is up to them. The girl thanked him. The guy with pink hair says that this is actually his strange illness. Like his mom, he can't help but be serious when it comes to anything performance-related. And besides, Andre was such a bad dancer that he couldn't pass by. Gel says that he knows that Saya really wants to win the first prize at the Freshers' Festival, and then it is reported that he will also try his best to win. After all, his partner is Celia, and therefore they should give it their all. Hearing this, the main character thought that Gels is very strong, and he is also paired with Celia, and he reflects on the fact that such a strong team should have a very good chance of winning. But he knows, the stronger the opponents, the more interesting the competition will be. Andre says that it doesn't matter who his partner is, because he believes that the first prize is his, and Saya claims that they will not lose to them. Gels is informed that he needs to go and wishes them to continue in the same spirit. After Gels left, he and Andre trained until dusk. The guy says he didn't expect it to be so tiring. In this case, the girl suggests ending this. Saya tells that she is a little hungry and asks if they can go to the dining room for dinner first, because he believes that he has worked hard all day and can order whatever he wants, since she is the one providing the treats. Andre grabs the girl by the hand and says that there is nothing special in the dining room, and therefore offers to go with her, since he knows a good place. At this time, the king, to ensure the safety of his daughter, inspects the surroundings of the school. And when he entered the cafe, he reflects that this place is next to the Royal School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and he does not understand why it is so dirty here. The emperor believes that he would never allow his daughter to come to such a place. And when I looked at the people, I saw my daughter among them. 20 minutes before, Andre tells the girl that they will go outside the school, and therefore they need to climb over the wall. And at that time, I thought that such a well-mannered princess as she would never do such a wild thing as climb over the wall to sneak out of school. Saya asks what he is waiting for, and she doesn't understand if they are running away from school, and then tells him to hurry up. The main character remembers that in her previous life, she was a cultivator and could go wherever she wanted. But in this life, her discipline was strictly enforced by her father and Riel ever since she became a princess. And finally, she had a chance to take a walk. Hearing this guy thought that she looked worried, and he misunderstood her, because she was not pretending to be noble. A few minutes later, they were already at the night market in the west of the city. The guy says that he grew up here, and asks if she likes it, because he thinks it's a good place. Hearing this, the main character realized that Angela was right, and he really is a commoner. Walking the streets of Saya, I was captivated by new products, and the guy understood that there were a lot of people, and she was here for the first time, and therefore he believed that he should not leave her side. And then he grabs her hand and says that she can look around but not move too far from him, otherwise she will get lost. The princess tells him not to worry, since she is not going to run away, and he considers him the same grumbler as his father. And at this time, the girl thought that she had not been in such a noisy place for a long time, and tonight she would have a good time. Say thought that she couldn't let her dad find out about this, because she understood that he would never allow her to come to such a place. When the princess saw her father, she thought that she was finished. At this time, the emperor does not understand why his daughter is walking in such a place, and these punks are hanging around her, and he thought that this brat must have fooled his daughter. And in his eyes, he looked scary, terrible, and dangerous, and his daughter was weak, poor, helpless. The king approaches his daughter and grabs his hand, and then he asks questions about who he is and why his daughter is with him and why he brought her here. The guy replies that his name is Andre, and then claims that he will have something to answer. At this time, the main character thought that he was so ruthless, and she did not understand how he could shift all responsibility onto her at such a moment. The princess tells Dad that this is a graduate of her school, and she was paired with him at the upcoming freshers party. And they had just finished rehearsing, and Andri invited her here for dinner. The Emperor asks his daughter how she could come to such a place, and then he says that this is just a crazy market. At this time, the main character thought that, as expected, he became angry. The Emperor tells the servant to destroy this bazaar and turn it into a decent food district, as his daughter is hungry and wants to eat. Hearing this, the girl thought that she had finally seen a place different from the palace, and again, she would be left with nothing. The father grabs her hand and tells the girl to return to the palace with him. Andri also grabs her, but by the other hand, and says that Saya is hungry and tired, and therefore she will need at least half an hour to leave the area. And then asks how about Togo, finds out how commoners try and have fun. The guy turns to His Majesty and asks if he wants his daughter to starve. At this time, the servants thought that he was an arrogant guy, and not only that, he was holding the princess's hand, but also asking His Majesty to try cheap food, and therefore they believe that His Majesty will finish him off. The father asks his daughter if she is hungry, and then he says that this is the first and last time, and he will go with her. When the servants saw this, they were surprised, because they did not even imagine that His Majesty would go to such a poor place. The seller, when he saw Andri, says that he snuck away from school again, and then you invite him to come in, and because they all missed him. And then the little guys ran up to the guy and greeted him. Seeing this, the main character thought that Andri was a local celebrity here. The seller asks the guy if he brought friends today, and then says that, judging by their clothes, they are from noble families. Andri smiles and says he has Diamond's eye, then suggests they just cook a good meal as usual. The man says they have a lot of customers today, but luckily he has reserved a table for them. At this time, the main character thought that she had only eaten imperial dishes for the past few years. Even though they are exquisite, the street food that she ate in her previous life seems much more delicious to her. She wonders if the street food here is good. A servant of the imperial court turns to His Majesty and informs him that he will specially prepare noble dishes for him, and then asks if they can treat his dinner table casually. At this time, the waiter comes up to them and takes the tablecloth from the table and says that they shouldn't use something like that here. Andri explains that they don't have many rules, and so they just enjoy the food and drinks, and then asks if His Majesty would like to try some beer. Hearing this, the Emperor thought that he usually drinks red wine and champagne, and this was his first time seeing beer, and it looks as dark as mud, and he wonders if it's really drinkable. The princess turns to Dad and says that she heard that he is good with drinking and therefore offers to try. The guy turns to His Majesty and says that it is better to drink beer in one gulp. The Emperor, when he drank beer, thought that he liked this taste which he dreamed of, and therefore considered it an excellent drink. And if you drink it in one gulp, it is very refreshing. The little guys come up to Andri and say that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and invite him to dance. And then the guy agrees, and they dance together. Saya looked at them and says that she looks cheerful and invites Dad to dance with them. The father also agrees, and then he subconsciously began with the court dance. At this time, the main character thought that she was so happy now. Saya reminds the guy that he was talking about not knowing how to dance, and then he claims that he just did a great job. Andri replies that he simply does not know how to dance as nobly as she does, and then he turns to His Majesty and asks what he thinks about it, because he considers it happiness to live a simple and free life. The guy says that the life of civilians is simple and pure. However, they understand that their streets do not look expensive, but here they live to the fullest and enjoy every minute. At this time, the king thought that he had never experienced such happiness before, and he did not know much about their life, and therefore he is too far from the life of ordinary people. The Emperor thinks that this boy has the courage and insight to tell him everything he thinks and believes that he has potential. His Majesty says they will be wasting their time and manpower if they turn this place into a noble food district, and therefore he believes that it is better to let it remain as it is, because it is safe here. And he believes that in the future, he needs to come here more often and inspect this place for the safety of his daughter. Hearing this, the main character thought that her father liked this place, but he still refused to admit it. The princess says they can talk about it later and suggests they enjoy their meal for now. After dinner, her father drove them back to school and returned to the palace. Andri tells the lady that the women's hostel, and with her abilities and courage, she will climb there alone and asks if he is wrong. The girl says that she will do this without any problems, and then thanks him for what he did, and wish him good night. Suddenly the lady noticed that her legs were bleeding, and it was probably because she danced a lot today, and then walked for a long time. Suddenly, the lady saw Blair and asked, in surprise, why he was here. He turns to Her Highness and says that he was waiting for her. The guy says there is something he would like to talk to her about, but he understands that her legs hurt, and so he can carry her on his back, and they can talk while walking. The princess thanks him but refuses. At this time, Andrew felt that there was another smell next to her. In the end, the main character could not refuse Blair. And when Andrew saw them, he thought that they were very close, and he doesn't understand why he feels unhappy about it. The guy ponders why he should even care that they are close. Blair turns to Her Highness and asks her to let him heal the bruises on her legs. The guy says that he has learned high-level healing magic, so the bruises will soon go away. And then he asks if she remembers what happened when they first met, that he healed her legs then too. The princess says that time has flown by, and they have both grown up, and he must have worked very hard these past few years since he used healing magic so well, and he even became a teacher at this school. Blair says he still can't help her, even if he's a teacher. And then he says that he already knows that Mr. Moen rated her as a bronze-level student, and that's what he wants to talk about. The guy reports that he is sure that this is all because the teacher was irresponsible, and he tried to contact the school on her behalf. But according to the rules of the assessment test, only the senior teacher has the right to conduct a repeat test. Blair claims that while he may not have the right to reevaluate the test, he will immediately come to her aid whenever she needs it. Hearing this, the main character thought that he had been watching her and had done so much for her, but she didn't know about this, and he is here now to comfort her. Saya tells Blair not to worry, and then tells Blair that she will handle the assessment test and asks if he doesn't believe that she will succeed. The guy turns to Her Highness and claims that she hasn't changed at all, and she still likes to decide everything herself. And then he tells her that if she gets into trouble, don't forget that he is always there. The next day, a course of elementary magic was held. Blair comes into the classroom that he is their teacher, and from now on will teach them elementary magic. Seeing this guy, the main character, thought that she had been looking forward to having a lesson with him ever since she found out that he was a teacher, but she didn't expect it to happen so soon. Students say that this is the youngest history teacher at the school, and he became one when he was 13. The teacher says today he will teach them something new, and therefore asks them to concentrate.